To open the Board of Health meeting for April, oh my goodness, what does it say?
May 3rd.
May 3rd, I'm looking on here, for May 3rd, 6 o'clock in the H. Bernard Monahan Hearing Room. Here is Michelle Kennedy, myself, board member, and new board member Ken Lewis. What else do I say? That's it? This is the first time I ever had to do this, so bear with me. Okay, so is that roll call?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do the bill vouchers.
Yep, and we don't have any.
Okay, so no bill vouchers, so check. Trash abatements, I'd like to make a motion to sign the trash abatements.
Approve. Motion?
Yeah.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're gonna sign this, you just sign that. Do we have to sign both, Deli, or just the
Yes,
one?
if
Oh,
they-
both?
if they end it.
Oh, okay.
And you guys are approving the minutes for February 28th and March 28th. And Ken is signing under need of necessity. Even
Okay.
though he wasn't there,
Yep,
he was able to view the meeting online.
okay. So next, we'll do the trash abatements, that was that. These are the minutes from February and March. Do I have to make a motion to sign them?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just look at the
Motion
first
to
rep book,
approve.
so, I'm just gonna go through and read what each one was about, and then we'll sign. Okay. I want to make a motion to sign the minutes for,
Approve the minutes.
approve the minutes for
February
Mar-
28th and March 28th.
February 28th, March 28th. All those in favor?
Second it.
Second
Ken, you
it.
could second it. Then you
Second
can
it.
take a vote.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Should've brought it down.
Do you have an extra pen?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, here's the originals, okay. That's all set. New business to discuss, 6 tobacco violations, meeting date.
Yep, so this is Kevin Mahoney.
Yep, I'm the tobacco coordinator for Rockland. And on April 8th, there were 6 sales to a person under 21 in the town of Rockland. There were no appeals. So tonight, I would like the board to make decision on number of days for the tobacco permit suspension. The law in Massachusetts is 1 to 30 days, but you vote on how many days that you would like to see, and also the date, and if possible, the same date.
I
for all the
was,
6.
yeah, so my thought today was so that we would pick a date for those violations to be heard and bring the establishments in, listen to them, and then the board will be able to vote their suspension dates.
Sounds perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking at a date in May preferably, at the end of May, or beginning of June.
Can we do it at the June meeting? Or is
We
that
don't
too far
have any
out?
dates yet
Okay.
set, because it's a new board. We typically did them the last
Tuesday
Tuesday
in
of
the
every month. So if that's okay with you, Ken,
Yeah.
we'll continue on with that?
Yep.
All right, perfect.
So will that be too late then to do it the end of June?
Well, that's why we would do it May 30th,
So,
if you wanted to. But that's the
meeting.
day after Memorial Day, so I don't know if we want to wait and then just do it at the end of June. Would it be too late, Ken?
I'd rather do it the end of June.
Me too. Okay, so that would be June 27th.
Oh, the end of June?
Yeah,
Is that too late?
too late?
I won't be here.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
So we just can't do it on the 1st or the 3rd, so we could do it the 13th of June?
Can we do the meeting for that for June the 13th as well and then
Yes,
change it to the end?
everything we'll do, yep.
That'll
June
work.
We'll do
13th,
everything June
okay.
13th,
Okay.
regular meeting and off.
Okay.
All right.
Do I have to make a motion for that?
No.
Okay.
All right, I will send all the establishments letters letting them know that it's on June 13th.
Okay. So that's new business, and then
And then
the signature for authority.
So that is just gonna be for now, you and Ken will sign the top part, and then we'll wait on the other.
Okay, so this is just so that you can, you're able to sign for anything in office.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you wanna talk about anything about the tobacco violations tonight, or you, or
No,
save it?
I would say that way they can respond if they have any.
I'm just gonna say number after it. Do we have to make a motion for these?
For the signatures, no?
No.
Oh, I should have printed that.
And then that's it, right? That's all we have. So do I have to close out this part? No, right?
No, we still open.
Right,
Yeah,
okay, so
now we're
just
just
do,
gonna
we
go-
just do nothing else?
Yeah, relative to the hearing.
Okay.
I put my signature there instead of.
Okay, so that's all we have for this portion.
And then, you have the agenda.
Yeah,
Just read this right here, and then next that.
this whole thing? Okay. Now we have a hearing pursuant to 105 CMR 410.850 on Board of Health orders dated March 17, 2023, and/or decision dated March 22nd, 23, to Christopher Falco, 30 to 36 Belmont Street in Rockland, at the request of James F. Creed Jr. Esquire, dated March 28, 23.
Turn it over to Mr. Moore.
And now I turn it over to Mr. Warren.
Good evening. My name is Peter Moran. I've been hired by the town of Rockland to act as a hearing officer in this case. My purpose is to preside over the presentation of the appeal, facilitate the presentation of the appeal, and maintain an orderly and peaceful hearing on behalf of the board, and to assist the Board of Health with fact-finding and conclusions. The Board of Health has the ultimate decision-making authority in this matter and is free to accept in whole or in part any recommendations that I may make, and will retain the right at each stage of this proceeding to ask any questions. As was previously stated, this hearing is conducted pursuant to 105 CMR 410-850 at the request of Christopher Falco, the owner of the property at 3036 Belmont Street, Rockland, 02370, was brought on his behalf by Attorney James F. Creed Jr. Attorney Creed, on behalf of his client, notified the Board of Health on March 28, 2023, under 105 CMR 410.832. He was asking the board to review the March 17, 2023 condemnation and correction orders. Those orders were issued following a March 15, 2023 inspection of the property and ordered by the Southeastern Massachusetts Housing Court. As you're aware, the Board of Health reviewed the March 17, 2023 orders and issued a decision that upheld the correction order and overturned the condemnation order. As this decision is the latest decision of the Board of Health, this is the decision which this hearing will concern. I want to set forth some basic procedures that I expect to be followed in this hearing. We will swear witnesses in. This meeting is being recorded by a stenographer. The steps that we will have in this hearing are we will first hear from the appellant, Christopher Falco, and his attorney. In accordance with Mr. Falco, or with 105 CMR 410-853, Mr. Falco may present whatever witnesses or documentary evidence he has that is relevant to this matter to show why the Board of Health's decision should be modified or withdrawn, or why a dwelling should not be condemned, vacated, or demolished, or why an action or failure to act by an inspector or other personnel of the Board of Health should be reconsidered, rescinded, or ordered. I will allow a brief opening statement by Mr. Falco's attorney and counsel for the town. We'll then hear from Mr. Falco and his witnesses. The Board of Health and I reserve the right to ask any questions we may have. I may permit the town's attorney to ask questions. Next, I will hear from the town and its witnesses, and just as with town council Mr. Falco and his witnesses, the Board of Health and I reserve to ask any questions we have of the town's witnesses. And through me, I may permit Mr. Falco's attorney to ask questions. I may also permit a quick summary of the case by Mr. Falco and or counsel for the town. We'll then close the public portion of the hearing. I want to emphasize tonight that I will not strictly apply the rules of evidence, meaning that the Board of Health and I may consider testimony and documents that do not strictly comply with the rules of evidence that will determine the weight or credibility that is going to be given to it. I presume that this hearing will be held with proper decorum, and there should not be any disruptive behavior of any kind during this hearing. At this point, I would ask anyone who is here to give testimony to please stand. Okay. I will be swearing you in collectively. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth during these proceedings?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. You can sit down. Now, when you are asked to testify, I'll be asking that you clearly state your name and residential address as a preliminary matter for the record so that the stenographer can have it. Are there any preliminary matters that council want to raise at this point?
I do. I have several objections.
Okay.
The first is to you, Mr. Moore. No, nothing personal. However, I'd like to see the request by the Rockland Board of Health to appoint a hearing officer. As I understand it, there is no agenda or meeting where such a request was discussed or made. To the extent there was a letter or a request, I'd like to know how that was made. It's objection number one. I'd like to know if there was a vote of the Rockland Board of Health to appoint Mr. Mooring as a hearing officer. I don't know that you held a meeting appointing him as a hearing officer, and under the state sanitary code, only a health agent or the elected members of the Board of Health can conduct such a hearing. Third, Mr. Mooring has an inherent conflict of interest. He was the former town administrator of the town of Norwell. As such, he was the 30-day chief executive officer of that town on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, which appointed Robert W. Galvin as town council. One of Mr. Mooring's other capacities as town administrator was to oversee all appointed officials. As such, he worked very closely with Mr. Galvin, who hand-picked him to be the hearing officer in this particular case. That inherent conflict of interest should preclude Mr. Mooring from acting as the hearing officer in this case. Fourth, we object to Mr. Mooring having the power to make recommendations as to the final decision, which is ultimately in the hands of the elected members of the Rockland Board of Health. And I would point you in this regard to the Massachusetts Board of Health Guidebook, which indicates that the hearing officer should be impartial and yet familiar with the particular case and the laws and regulations pertinent to the case, citing to the Administrative Procedures Act, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 1A. I fail to see how Mr. Moore, no matter how good he is, could possibly have familiarized himself with the complexities of this particular case in the short period of time from when he was identified to me to tonight. In addition, the health officer should introduce him herself and direct the hearing by stating the purpose of the hearing and highlighting the main issues of the case. Clear indication that either the health official, Ms. Flip, or one of the elected members of the Rockland Board of Health should be the hearing officer. That is how typically such hearings are conducted by other municipal boards. In addition, the guidebook, which also dovetails into the Administrative Procedures Act, allows for the examination and cross-examination of witnesses. If I heard Mr. Moore incorrectly, he's going to decide what questions would be allowed. I don't think that's in accordance with the guidebook, which also pulls into effect the Administrative Procedures Act. Those are my objections as to Mr. Moore.
Thank you, counsel. They're noted for the record. I would say that I was not the hiring authority for Mr. Galvin at the town of Norwell. And I feel that I am able to be objective in this case and assist the Board of Health in their fact-finding role this evening. I have 3.5 decades of experience in administrative law and am intimately familiar with Chapter 38 and have held numerous and worked as a hearing officer on a variety of cases under the Administrative Procedure Act. That being said, is there anyone here taping this besides the stenographer? Could you please advise me now? I know that this is televised, but is anyone else taping this? Are there any exhibits that either party wants to pre-mark?
Mr. Moore,
Mr. Galvin.
I handed you and the board members a list of exhibits in an exhibit book. I also handed one to Attorney Creed just prior to the hearing. There is an additional letter that was emailed to me by National Grid at 4:51 today that I've included that is not in the exhibit book but is separate. I also handed that to Attorney Creed. Those would be the exhibits for the health agent.
Okay.
To the extent that the letter that was received at 4:51 is intended to be submitted tonight, I object to that as well. Not only is it late, but it's also factually grossly inaccurate as to the factual circumstances that it relates between May 19th and May 25th of 2021. And to the extent it is submitted, I'd like the record left open so that we can respond to that letter, which was handed to me just before the hearing.
Okay, I will leave the record open at this point during the course of counsel's presentation if he wishes to enter it. Then I will consider it, but at this point, I'm just going to set it aside.
As to pre-marking the exhibits, I'm going to hand you my exhibits as we need them because I'm not sure that I need all of them.
Very well, thank you. Okay. If there are no other issues, we can begin the hearing, and counsel, you may make an opening statement briefly.
I'm going to waive opening statement and go straight to the witnesses.
Okay, counsel, would you wish to make a quick opening statement?
Very briefly. Good evening, members of the board. I think I should make this statement because I know, Mr. Lewis, this is one of your first meetings, and I wanted you to have a little understanding of what's happening here tonight. On March 15th, pursuant to an order issued by the Housing Court, various town officials, including the health agent, building commissioner, wiring and plumbing inspector, fire chief, deputy fire chief, and Mr. Taylor, who's the highway director, conducted an inspection of the premises at 30 to 36 Belmont Street, which is a multifamily home owned by Mr. Falco, who is the appellant here tonight. Following that, the health agent, Ms. Flip, issued a condemnation and correction order, which you're going to see and are included in the exhibits. Because the order was issued by the health agent, endorsed by the chair of the board, but issued by the health agent on March 21st, the Board of Health, of which you weren't on at the time, Mr. Lewis, conducted a review of those letters and issued a decision dated March 22nd, which was served on Mr. Falco and his counsel. And that decision upheld the correction order, but it overturned the condemnation order. And I'll let you read it and decide, whatever you want about it. This hearing tonight is about the validity of what occurred on March 17th and March 22nd, but principally the 22nd, because that is the latest date that any decision was made by the Board of Health. And Attorney Creed's going to tell you why he thinks that there was an error in the issuance of the order, or why it was wrong, or why the board should not uphold it. On behalf of the health agent, I would suggest that there was good cause. There are a number of conditions that I believe the evidence will show would be deemed to endanger health, safety of occupants. Were the building to be occupied, these issues have to be resolved before the building can be occupied. It's the most urgent desire of all of us on the town side that these issues be corrected, so that if anybody chooses to return, they're welcome to do that. And there are a number of other violations of the state sanitary code that don't affect health and safety and welfare, but would need to be corrected. The time frame right now is a little open-ended. The building isn't occupied. As long as all of these issues are fixed before occupancy, but most particularly the issues that are deemed to affect or impair health and safety are the issues that we would absolutely request that the board find have to be resolved before occupancy. There is a housing court judge that's involved in this matter. There's also a Superior Court judge involved in this matter. We don't know where ultimately this dispute will end up, but we're asking you to affirm the correction order that the board issued on the 22nd of March, and we have witnesses that'll, I think, give you evidence that that was a decision that was made in good faith and was warranted by the facts and the law. Thank you.
Before I call the witness, just one last objection. Is it your intention to go forward with less than a full complement of members?
Yes.
Yes.
Note my objection for the record. Can I have Tracy DeRay and Arnold Benjamin?
Thank you.
Take names for the record.
Tracy Duray,
Arnold Benjamin.
Can you spell your last name, please?
D-U-R-E.
Thank you. Yes.
Can you please state your address, your current address?
103 Grove Street, apartment 321 in Rockland.
Same.
And what was your former address?
32B Belmont Street in Rockland.
So the property that's the subject matter of this hearing.
Correct.
How long did you live at Belmont Street?
Less than 1 year.
And did you have any problems with your apartment?
Not one.
And did you have occasion to file an amended verified complaint in the housing court
Yes.
with regard to Belmont Street? And is that a copy of that complaint that you have in front of you?
Yes, it is.
And specifically, if you look to the portions that I've highlighted, you had attached a narrative. Is the highlighted portion that I have provided to you, is that an accurate statement?
That is correct.
And could you read that into the record?
For a specific example, Delshon Flip, the Rockland Board of Health agent, told us on 5/27/21 that she personally called National Grid to shut the power off. She told all of the tenants this. Later that day, the power was shut off.
Thank you. And were you evicted as a function of the original condemnation order
Yes,
that issued on May 20th?
yes.
And were you given any prior notice of the fact that you were going to be evicted from the premises?
Not at all.
Thank you. You done unless they have questions for you.
Could I ask a question, Mr. Moore?
Yeah.
Mr. Benjamin and Mr. Ray, are you familiar with the condition of the property on March 15th, 2023?
Only from reading the inspection report that was given to the tenants.
Okay, but you haven't been in the building since when?
Since we were kicked out.
Yeah.
So when was the last day you were physically present at the property?
The day of the eviction, 5/20/21, 22, I think it was.
And was that the date that there was a condemnation order issued?
Yeah,
Okay. You said the word evicted, but there was actually a condemnation order issued on that date, is that correct?
yes.
I have no further questions.
Just one on redirect. Did that condemnation order require you to vacate the premises?
Yes, it did.
So you consider that to be an eviction?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Anything further?
No.
Awesome.
Could you state your name for the record?
Elizabeth Bach,
And Ms. Bach, where do you reside?
168 Howard Street.
Counsel, I apologize. I just want to make sure that we have your name accurately for the record.
Oh.
Could you spell your last name?
It's B-O-C-K,
Thank you.
And again, where do you live?
168 Howard Street,
And where did you formerly live?
on Belmont Street.
And what apartment,
I
Belmont?
believe I was 34 or 36. I was on the second floor.
Okay. And did you have any conversations with the health agent, Delshon Flip, relative to the power being cut off?
Yes,
And what did Ms. Flip tell you?
that she said, well, first the gas was turned off without us being known. And then the next day we were condemned, and then she let us know that within the next couple of days that the electricity would be shut off.
So the gas was shut off before the condemnation order?
Yes. I actually came home, I put a chicken in the oven, and I noticed a half an hour later that my oven wasn't preheated. So I went outside to see if there was anything wrong with the gas meter, and that's when we all found out there was no gas. And then the next day, I was on my way from home from work. I got called from my boss to let me know there was something posted on Facebook that my building was condemned. So I came home to that.
And how long did you live at Belmont Street?
I had just moved in October 31st.
And
So
were
not
there
even
any
5
problems?
months.
I'm sorry.
Not even 5 months.
And were there any problems with your unit during the time period that you lived there?
Absolutely not. I actually get housing, and there was an inspection done by the state to approve the apartment before I moved in.
And that's a Section 8 inspection,
Correct.
I have no further questions.
I have no questions.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'd like to submit two other, let me organize them for you. These are the complaints of two other tenants, Lindsay DeLima and Brenda Malif, pretty much saying the same things.
Okay, I'm going to mark these appellants 2 and 3.
Setting the call Felix Zemmel of Academic Solutions. State your name for the record, please, sir.
Felix I. Zemmel.
And Mr. Zemmel, are you the principal of Academic Solutions?
I am.
And because I didn't resubmit your curriculum vitae, I'd just like you to go through the highlights of your resume for the benefit of the board and the hearing officer.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to see you again, Ms. Kennedy. Nice to meet you again, sir. Or nice to meet you, sir. Sorry, we didn't meet at the last hearing. My name is Felix Zemmel. I am, as I said, principal of Academic Solutions, which is a code consulting, public health, life safety consulting firm. I have nearly 20 years of experience in public health, building safety, life safety. And I'm a Massachusetts registered sanitarian. I have my master's degree in public health with a concentration in environmental health. I have a master's in city planning. I am a doctoral candidate for a doctorate in public health with a focus on building codes and life safety for my dissertation. I have worked for multiple municipalities as a health agent and building inspector. I was previously the chief of building inspections for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where I oversaw the development and implementation of the Massachusetts State Building Code. I also worked with my colleague, who I believe is going to be testifying later today, in his former capacity at the Department of Public Health in discussions about the building code and the sanitary code. I have served as an expert witness on many cases regarding the state sanitary code and housing conditions. I've published multiple articles on the topic in national journals and presented at multiple conferences. I previously served as a board member of the Massachusetts Health Officers Association and have multiple citations and awards from the National Environmental Health Association and the Massachusetts Environmental Health Association, and have served as a technical advisor for the National Environmental Health Association in a number of fields. I've written the chapter for housing sanitation for the National Environmental Health Association's REHS-RS study guide for the last 2 editions of this study guide, which is the exam that is used by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for licensing of registered sanitarians as well.
So I'm going to show you a document. You recognize that document, Mr. Zemmel?
I'm looking through it right now, but it appears to be an affidavit that I wrote over a month ago.
And that's in connection with the subject matter of this particular hearing, correct?
It is.
With regard to the decision of March 17th, 2022 of the Rockland Board of Health.
If I could have a second just to read it and reacquaint myself, it's been over a month since I wrote this, or about a month since I wrote this. Yes, this is regarding the subject matter of, as I believe it to be, of this hearing tonight.
So why don't you go through your analysis of the decision based on your experience and your professional experience and expertise?
So, as the board members know, and many in the gallery know, I testified at the hearing on March 21st, 22nd of the Board of Health. And I was provided on March 21st. And I was provided a copy of the board's order that was dated March 22nd. I apologize, I had to think about the timeline a little bit. I was provided a copy of the order of this board dated March 22nd. And I read through the order, and I was scratching my head because it was rife with inaccuracies. There were multiple things stated in that order that did not occur. And that really prompted me to make the suggestion to Mr. Falco to appeal that order to come before this board again to address those factual inaccuracies about what occurred at that meeting. And I went and I actually rewatched the video of that. Thankfully, it is posted online to just make sure that I was correct in my understanding and that it wasn't just my memory thinking one thing and it being another. But I went back and I re-verified it on the video recording. And the items, for example, were the decision states that the board voted to secure the property. But the video shows that Chairwoman Stewart made a motion to, quote unquote, not to condemn the order and to affirm the correction order allowing the time through April 4th, 2023. It was seconded with no further discussion and then passed unanimously by the board. Nowhere was there a vote on securing the property, which the order stated did occur. This happened at the 2-hour, 7-minute mark on the video. The decision also states that I conceded that there were a sufficient number of issues that would endanger the health or safety of the occupants. I said no such thing. In fact, I said that many of the conditions cited by Ms. Flipp were inaccurately cited as to the relevant code sections and or classified as to conditions deemed to endanger or impair the health or safety of the occupants. I did not testify that the conditions on May 21st as to the conditions on May 21st, I stated that some of these conditions did exist and directed counsel to my report, which documents all of my findings, which counsel stated he didn't have, even though it had been noted that he'd received multiple copies prior. I did not state that the lack of electrical ground is unsafe. I instead said that it was a quick fix. At footnote 1, I didn't make the statement attributed to the footnote. I stated that some of the violations of the standard code existed, but nothing further. I didn't concede any units above 4. I said that there are questions as to which units, other than the 4 listed, were the additional legal units referenced by the building official and or assessor. I even referred to the 6-unit layout that town council, to be clear, Attorney Galvin, handed to us at the beginning of the hearing, as well as the testimony of the building commissioner that the first floor quote-unquote efficiency units were pre-existing. My testimony in my report actually reflected my continued suspicion that the 3rd unit was the pre-existing 5th unit in the assessor's records that's referenced at and was once a single unit. I further testified that I believe the 2 quote-unquote efficiency units were previously connected to units 30B and 36B services and that they were separated along with the 3rd floor unit from the house service into their own individual electrical services when unpermitted electrical work was installed. Due to my testimony, I stated numerous times that I believe that no less than 4 units of the dwelling units would have still been occupiable had it not been for the disconnection of the electrical service by health agent Delshawn Flipp and not by the town's wiring inspector. Although Ms. Flipp did state that she did not order it disconnected, we've heard now from 2 residents that stated that not by hearsay, but directly from Ms. Flipp, that she had the electrical service disconnected. I also presented at that hearing records from National Grid stating that it was at the order of the Board of Health, And Chairwoman Stewart asked me, how did I know that it was Ms. Flip and not the board members? And I responded asking Ms. Stewart, was it her or one of the board members that ordered it disconnected? To which there was no response. The National Grid records actually stated, service was pole cut 5/27/21 per Board of Health, building empty electrical and wiring inspection needed prior to reconnect here. The decision neglects to state that I refuted the conditions regarding inadequate exits as they were citing codes that do not exist in Massachusetts and showed their general lack of knowledge or expertise or qualifications for enforcement, given that the town's departments cited codes that were either deleted or amended out of the state's Board of Fire Prevention Regulations and state's Board of Building Regulations and Standards codes, aka the State Fire Code and the State Building Code. Following my testimony, Attorney Galvin asked me whether any legal impediments existed that prevented Mr. Falco from performing the renovations cited in 2021. Although I responded that there were no actual legal impediments, I also stated that there's a perceived impediment because the Board of Health and Fire Department were not permitting any access to the site without the health agent's prior permission, as was written by Ms. Flip and the Rockland Fire Department and testified to by Ms. Flip earlier in the hearing. So all of these issues are all inaccuracies that were written into the order of this board that should not have been there. And I believe that is the grounds for this hearing tonight.
And is it your opinion that those inaccuracies and those misstatements are rationale and reason for this board to either withdraw or rescind that decision?
I believe that those inaccuracies are reason for the board to reconsider their decision and modify their decision as to the actual happenings and the actual testimony that occurred at that hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Counsel, do you have any questions?
I do. Good evening, Mr. Zemmel.
Good evening, counsel.
When you were present at the March 15th, 2023 inspection, is that correct?
Yes.
And at that time, would you agree with me that there was no electricity to the building?
Yes.
And you don't have any personal knowledge as to the circumstances under which the power was disconnected from the building. Your information comes from reading some notes on a National Grid website, is that correct?
That is incorrect.
And from the statements of the tenants that have provided that tonight?
That is incorrect.
Okay. So what additional information do you have to support your contention that the health agent had the power turned off?
I did not obtain any documents from the National Grid website. I reviewed documents that were provided by National Grid from their internal records as a result of a public records request and turned over to me at my request by Mr. Falco and his attorney. These are all National Grid records.
Do you know a person by the name of John McLaughlin at National Grid?
No.
Have you ever heard his name prior to mentioning it right now?
No.
Have you seen the letter that was provided to me today at 4:51, dated May 3rd, 2003, written by John McLaughlin at National Grid?
No.
Could I hand that to you, sir? Mr. Zemmel, could you just take a moment and read that letter?
I've read this.
Reading that letter, do you have an understanding that there may be a different version of the events as to why the power was turned off at 30 to 36 Belmont Street?
I have no record that this actually came from National Grid. This does not appear to be the standard letterhead that I've seen National Grid use in their correspondences in the past. This states nowhere in it the position, contact information, or any other documentation that this is a valid letter or who this Mr. McLaughlin actually is. This also contradicts directly documents provided by National Grid that state quite the opposite occurred in many of these instances. And in here it states that the inspector ordered it to be at the inspector's direction. It doesn't state which inspector. This still keeps it open, and this actually puts even more light on the fact that the town is trying to conceal what actually happened. And that makes me question and a little bit more affirmed that it was Miss Flip who made this happen.
Sir, do you see in the second sentence where it says National Grid was at this location on May 19, 2021 due to multiple calls from the tenants of the building due to billing issues and complaints?
Yep.
Had you ever heard that before?
Yes.
But you have no personal knowledge as to whether the National Grid was in fact there on that date, is that correct?
I believe the records from National Grid, from their internal database, and from that public records request that I referenced, do state that they were there at that date.
Okay. And the next sentence says, once on site, we requested the wire inspector join us during this effort and determine several issues with the internal wiring connections along with possible wiring connections impacting the tenant's billing issues.
Yep. And my understanding is the wiring inspector did meet them on site, and there was a decision made by the wiring inspector and National Grid to allow the service to stay connected.
Well, the next sentence says, at that time, we allowed the owner a short period of time to correct the violations prior to having the electric service permanently interrupted.
Okay, again, I don't know why we're reading this. There's no proof that this came from National Grid or who this person is. So I can agree to the.
I appreciate that Mr. Zemmel doesn't believe that this letter is authentic, but, you know, the attorney can raise this issue, and the board is free to give this whatever weight it chooses.
Okay, counsel, at this point, I'm going to allow you to inquire on this letter. Counsel, your witness is referencing documents that he has examined that I believe you acquired through a public records request.
Through request through National Grid.
Okay.
I'll be dealing with those on redirect.
Okay, so you will be entering those in. Okay, thank you.
But my prior objection to this particular letter is even more prescient now, given the fact that it can't be authenticated, and Mr. Zemmel is seeing it for the first time and being asked to opine as to it.
I'm just asking him if he's aware of any of these circumstances and has any personal knowledge.
Okay, and I will allow that line of inquiry. And I will allow you on redirect to demonstrate and to provide documents that may contradict the contents of the letter.
Thank you.
Okay? And the board can decide what probative value this letter has on their own.
In that regard, just before you move on, in that regard, since we have several of the tenants here, I would be calling them as rebuttal witnesses later.
Okay.
So, may I proceed, Mr. Moore?
Yes, you may.
So there's an indication that on May 25th, 2021, the crew and inspector found the situation the same with no corrective work performed to address the code violations, at which point we isolated and cut the electric service to the property following the inspector's direction. Did I read that correctly?
That's what it says. It doesn't say which inspector. And based on the records from National Grid that I referenced before, it appears to have been the Board of Health inspector.
Sir, the next line says, subsequent actions have been communicated with the owner of the property on the required next steps by a licensed electrician, and then following an electrical inspection, we can move forward with restoration.
Yep, and as I read into the record previously, the note from National Grid said, service was pole cut on 5/27/21 per Board of Health, building empty, electrical and wiring inspector needed prior to reconnect here.
My question is, are you aware of whether whether Mr. Falco has been told what he needed to do in order to restore power to the building?
There is question as to what, because again, and this is where the authenticity of this and the credibility of whoever this Mr. McLaughlin is, because I have seen communications from National Grid with proper contact information stating that a work request was done and stating that attempts have been made to reconnect electrical service. And I've seen emails from, I believe it's either yourself or your colleague, referencing conversations between yourself and Inspector Paul regarding the fact that he doesn't necessarily believe that National Grid is requiring this. And my conversations and my understanding of the electrical code is that, and of the National Grid standards, not code, but standards, is that if it's an existing service and you're not upgrading the service, that the service does not have to be brought outside.
So, Mr. Zemmel, are you familiar with an email that was sent by John McLaughlin, Supervisor, National Grid, Customer Connections, New England, dated Friday, April 21st, 2023 at 3:21?
No, again, as I testified previously, I don't believe I've heard John McLaughlin's name previously.
Okay. Can I approach the witness, Mr. Moore?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Zemmel, I'm going to show you an email chain, and this is marked as Exhibit 11 in the town's exhibit book. And I'm going to ask you to read the bottom email and then the top email.
Okay?
Have you ever seen that email before, or that email chain?
No.
Does that email at least give an indication who John McLaughlin is in his capacity as an employee of National Grid?
That gives me a indication of who John McLaughlin, the employee of National Grid, is. That does not give me any indication of the validity of this.
Okay. So you don't know whether the John McLaughlin in the letter that I handed you is the same John McLaughlin that's in this email? Is that?
Yep, especially since much of the language that is referenced in here doesn't meet the same language that is written in the email. And the language in the email is more to my recollection of how National Grid operates and speaks.
Okay, it says in the email, if I'm reading it correctly, the customer will need to follow our process and procedure and complete WR 307 62302 hyphen where at the end service meets all code within our specification book and is signed off by our design team and municipal inspector.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Falco has done that and followed the procedures where at the end the service could meet all code within their specification book, was signed off by their design team and the municipal inspector?
I do not know. I have not communicated with Mr. Falco in a number of weeks.
So when you were inspecting the property on March 17th, did you find any conditions that you would categorize as conditions deemed to endanger health and safety in accordance with 105 CMR 750?
105 CMR 410.750.
Correct.
There are some conditions that could have been conditions deemed to endanger,
Okay.
but those are not condemnable conditions.
Okay. So the Board of Health actually issued a correction order, not a condemnation order, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So tell me what conditions you observed that you believe could be categorized as conditions deemed to endanger.
I don't have my report in front of me,
I have a copy of your report if you need to refer to it.
if you don't mind.
Feel free to look at it. This is exhibit number 9 for the board members.
Thank you very much for providing this.
So my question was, which conditions that you observed on March 15, 2023 were conditions that could be categorized as conditions deemed to endanger under the list provided in 105 CMR 410-750?
So, again, the disconnection of the electrical service, not providing electrical service, not providing heat, not providing gas for the unit are conditions deemed to endanger. There is a condition deemed to endanger that states that the door leading into the unit from the common area is not designated as a security or fire safety door, but a hollow core door is installed for unit 36B. Again, as I stated, this is a condition deemed to endanger or the health or safety of the occupants, which can be quickly remediated by installation of a code-compliant entry door prior to reoccupancy of the space. Again, these units are all vacant currently. I'm just looking through it. It's a 12-page report. I'm on page 4. So there are multiple items that are violations of 410.351A that, if not completed within a certain period of time, become conditions deemed to endanger, just by the sheer fact of which section they are cited under and the timeline between citing and compliance.
What is the time frame for compliance?
I believe it is, I have to look back at the sanitary code again.
If you look at exhibit number 14, the sanitary code is in there in its entirety.
Thank you. It requires that the owner make a good faith effort to correct the item within 24 hours.
And at what time frame do they become conditions deemed to endanger?
States anytime that there's a failure to install electrical, plumbing, gas fitting facilities in accordance with accepted plumbing, heating, gas fitting, and electrical wiring standards, or failure to maintain such as required by 410.351, so as to expose the occupant or anyone else to fire, burns, shock, accident, or other danger or impairment to health or safety. So they become conditions deemed to endanger once A, they are determined to not be designed to the appropriate standards, and B, that they expose the occupant or anyone else to fires, burns, shocks, accidents, or other danger or impairment to health or safety.
And what provision of the code are you reading from in section number?
105 CMR 410.750L as in Lima.
And can I direct your attention to 410.0?
Any of the following conditions which remain uncorrected for a period of 5 or more days following the notice to or lack of of knowledge of the owner or of said condition. Talks about a kitchen sink of sufficient size and quality. It talks about failure to provide a wash basin or shower or tub. Any defect in the electrical, plumbing, or heating system which makes such a system or part thereof in violation of generally accepted practices that do not create an immediate hazard. So I believe that's what you're talking about with the 5 or more days, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay, so after 5 days, situations like that also become conditions deemed to endanger, is that correct?
Correct.
And I know you said there were conditions that existed that fell into that category, but can you tell the Board of Health what conditions you can recall observing that fell into that category?
So, like, the drain plug for the bathtub in one of the units was one of the items. That, again, it doesn't actually pose one of those imminent hazards, but it is not installed in accordance with standard practice. I believe this particular one, it appears that somebody, my suspicion would have been a prior occupant, connected this drain with a shoelace or something based on how I recall it, that it was connected.
Were there any other conditions you observed on March 15th that fell into this category, which required good faith effort within 24 hours and remediation within 5 days?
Well, I know the venting issue was addressed by pretty much immediately.
When you say venting, can you tell me what you mean by that?
The furnace vent in the basement furnace, where the furnace had been disconnected, the vent had been capped off. And the plumbing inspector had confirmed that has been corrected as of the date of the inspection. So that, even though it was referenced in Ms. Flipp's order, was a condition that did not actually exist because it had been corrected previously.
So I wanted to know what conditions you observed, not what conditions you observed having been remedied.
Okay.
Can you recall any others?
I'm just looking through again. It's a 12-page report. The smoke detectors issues, where there were a couple of smoke detectors that were missing and carbon monoxide detectors that were missing, are conditions deemed to endanger.
Sir, would you also agree with me that any of the smoke detectors or carbon monoxide alarms that were hardwired were not operative on that date?
Well, I think that the fact that there's no electricity at the property lends to the fact that they were not operative on that date.
All right. Mr. Moran, if the witness could just answer my question.
I think he answered reasonably well, but yeah, if you just, confine your answer to the question as best you can.
Thank you very much.
Were there any other conditions that you observed on March 15th that would be deemed conditions deemed to endanger health and safety?
Yes, there were multiple junction boxes that were missing covers. There was, again, the electrical ground that, although it's a quick fix to do, it hadn't been previously cited, but that would have been a condition deemed to endanger after the 5 days, and could arguably be one of the 24-hour because it does expose an occupant to shocks. But again, that wasn't cited until that day, and there was no actual hazard because there was no electricity. So I would argue, because of that fact, that it became one of those 5-day conditions deemed to endanger. The electrical service that was installed without permits is a condition deemed to endanger that needed to be remedied immediately, but again, because of the fact that there was no electricity on site that day, it became a 5-day issue as well. There was an exposed wire outside, near the rear of the building that, that needed to be capped off. That would have been an immediate condition deemed in danger had electricity been present at the site.
Am I able to ask a question?
You are once
Oh, okay.
trying to go
And I think those are all the conditions deemed to endanger under the state sanitary code that were present at the time.
Mr. Zemmel, were you able to observe the two units on the third floor and the second means of egress and access in the rear of the building?
I apologize, I needed to lock the table, it keeps moving,
That's all right.
so.
Did you hear what I asked?
Yes, I was able to review that egress, that second egress.
Okay. And were you able to determine the width of the rear accesses in each of the two units?
So, if this building were subject to the building code, which it is, the state building code allows for one exit access from a dwelling unit if you meet the maximum travel distance requirements and the maximum number of units per floor if it's under the fourth floor. So I was not able to measure the travel distance from the farthest point of the unit to the front entrance, but depending upon that distance, one could argue that only one exit is required, and that secondary stairway that you are referencing is not part of the means of egress.
Were you present when the building commissioner was discussing the adequacy of that access?
Yes.
And did you hear his opinion as to the adequacy of that access?
And I object to his opinion because he was citing codes that do not exist.
Mr. Zemmel, respectfully, he asked you if that's a yes or no question.
Okay. So could you restate the question?
Sure. Did you hear his opinion as to the adequacy of that access in those two rear units?
Yes.
And he determined, did he not, that the access via those two stairways was not compliant with the code? Isn't that his substance of his opinion?
He verbally stated it, but he did not formalize that opinion in an order or a determination from his office in compliance with the state building code.
Sir, do you know when those third floor units were constructed?
As I spoke at the last hearing, I suspect they've been there for, at least my suspicion is that they were all one unit previously, and that they were connected to the house electrical meter. And I apologize that I'm answering the question, but
Could you just stop for a second? Rather than state it as your suspicion, but based on your review of the records and your review of the property, it's your opinion.
based on my review of the records and my review of the property, I cannot determine definitively when those units were added. But my suspicion, based upon my review of the records, is that that at least one unit has existed on that third floor for a number of years.
Okay. And that's based solely on a review of records, is that correct?
On a review of records and on walking the site twice.
Were you present when the wiring inspector actually entered into true closet areas with the plumbing inspector and identified the date of wires and the date of manufacture of hot water heaters?
Yes, I believe I directed the plumbing inspector to the wiring inspector to those closets.
And would you agree with me that the wiring and plumbing fixtures, the hot water heaters, were manufactured in 2019 and 2020?
I would agree it's somewhere around there, yes.
And do you know when that is in relation to when Mr. Falco purchased the property?
It was after the fact, and I believe there was a plumbing permit obtained as well. And I believe I testified at the last hearing that we had an invoice from a plumber that charged Mr. Falco for the permits.
So, Mr. Zemmel, you did indicate before that was electrical and plumbing work performed without the benefit of permits, and that was one of the conditions you deemed to endanger.
That is, no, I said that the work was done not to the standards of the proper code, and I did not say it to the plumbing, I stated it to the electrical. I read out the state sanitary code, which lists plumbing, electrical, gas, all as provisions and standards that must be met.
So you did not testify that no work was done without a permit?
I did not testify that no work was done without a permit for the plumbing work. I did testify as to the electrical work.
And specifically, what electrical work was done without a permit?
There were multiple wires that had dates after the date of Mr. Falco's purchase of the property, including the wires going up to those third floor hot water heaters, and including the wiring going up to those third floor hot water heaters, and the electrical service equipment inside those electrical closets.
Lastly, have you ever spoken to anybody at National Grid about the electrical service to this property?
No.
I have no further questions.
Prior to your redirect, I just want
Yes,
to
I'll
allow the
defer to
board
Ms. Kennedy.
to ask
Okay.
questions.
So, my question was about the wires in the back that were outside that needs to be capped, is that correct?
There was an old AC unit previously that was removed, but the wires that used to go to the equipment were still there, and it needed to be removed and capped off. I don't know when that was removed. I don't know if it might have been capped off inside, but the electrical code requires if there are wires present that are not used, they need to be removed. So even if it was capped off outside, it should have still been removed.
Okay. Thank you.
Counsel?
Senator, you were asked about National Grid records. Take a look at those, familiarize yourself with them.
Counsel, just for the record, you marked this Exhibit E. I'm tracking your exhibits, and I'm going to mark this as Appellant 4.
A number of the documents that I have are from other pleadings, so
Okay.
you
I
can
just-
ignore my, they were
Okay.
not marked for this purpose.
All right, thank you. I just
Yeah.
wanted to correct that for the
Yep,
record.
sure.
Thank you.
So, I see this.
Have you had an opportunity to familiarize yourself with that?
Yep.
Are those some of the National Grid records that you reviewed?
Yes.
And what do those records indicate? All of them in every single case?
Service was pole cut 5/27/21 per Board of Health. Building empty, electrical and wiring inspector needed prior to reconnect here.
And what's the date that they say that the service was cut?
5/27/21.
Thank you. And do each one of them state roughly the same thing?
Yes.
Each of the 6 or so pages?
Yes.
Earlier, you were asked about water heaters on the 3rd floor. And you referenced an invoice, which was provided to town council at the last hearing. If I suggested to you that this is an invoice from Tucci Plumbing in Weymouth, would you recollect that?
Yes.
And what does this invoice show? Well, first of all, what's the date of the invoice?
4/6/2020.
And what does the invoice reflect?
It is addressed to Belmont Properties at 30 Belmont Street, and it states 2 third-floor heaters. 2 third-floor heaters, blank on-site, meet on-site per property management company, cash on delivery. And it's to replace two 40-gallon water heaters, pipe shutoffs fittings, and for 2 permits. It doesn't state electrical or gas. So, but 2 permits at the cost of $60 per permit, and then disposal and labor costs for a grand total of $1,975.
And it reflects that it was paid, correct?
Yes.
And what do you take it to mean, the term disposal as a service?
Taking out the old hot water heaters that they are replacing.
So the
And
existing water
discarding.
heaters on the 3rd floor being replaced by brand-new water heaters in 2020.
Yes.
And that would reflect why those water heaters had a date after January 31st, 2018, which is the date that Mr. Falco purchased the building.
Yes.
Do you know, if you do know, what the life expectancy of a water heater is, an electric water heater?
It really depends on the individual the individual brand and quality of the water heater.
Can you estimate it, just a range?
I can't confidently.
Would you expect, if you purchased a water heater on January 31st of 2018, brand new, that you'd be replacing it in April of 2020?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Just one quick question. You're drawing you've never spoken to Tucci Plumbing to understand what they mean. These are inferences you're drawing based on this invoice, is that correct?
Based on the plain language of this invoice.
The inferences you're drawing are drawing from the language on this invoice, is that correct?
Yes, from the plain language of this invoice.
But you've not spoken to Tucci Properties or Plumbing to determine what they intended when they wrote that, is that correct?
That is correct.
No further questions?
Just a brief redirect. So do you take it in the first line that replace 2 40-gallon water heaters electric means that they were replacing 2 40-gallon water heaters that are electrically powered?
Yes.
And do you deem the term disposal in relation to the fact that they're replacing 2 water heaters to mean that they're disposing of the 2 pre-existing water heaters?
Yes.
Thank you.
Board have any questions? Have any other counsel?
I do not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christopher Falco.
Mr. Moran, when you were administering an oath, Mr. Falco did not stand or raise his hand and take an oath, so I'd ask that he be given an oath.
Sure. Mr. Falco, could you just, do you swear that the testimony and evidence that you give before this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Am I sitting here or?
You can sit there.
You can sit there.
Mr. Falco, are you familiar with the correction order that was issued by the health agent?
Yes.
And am I correct in that there are roughly 11 areas of deficiency that are cited in that correction order?
Yes.
And of the 11, how many have to do with the lack of electrical service?
I believe at least 8 of them.
And have you been informed by the town of Rockland as to what's going to be required for electrical service to be restored to the building?
Not directly, but yes, I have them.
Okay, so what is your understanding of what is required by the town of Rockland before electrical service can be restored to the building?
I believe that the electrical inspector wants the electrical meters to be moved outside from inside.
And have you inquired of master electricians as to how to accomplish that task?
Yes.
And what are the names of those electricians?
One's name is Timothy Gardner, and another's name is Frank Prawl.
And what have they both told you with regard to the requirement that the meters be moved from the inside of the building in the basement to the outside exterior of the building?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it, but, I'm going to allow the answer.
They both told me that this has absolutely nothing to do with safety or operation of the electricity. It's just solely for a billing purpose for National Grid.
And have they told you anything else with regard to the components that are required to make this transition from the meters being located inside the building to being located to the exterior of the building?
They both told me that there was a new code that was just passed in 2023, which is a brand-new code, and the parts required are 1 to 2 years from even being able to purchase them, never mind install them.
And I'll show you a document. Do you recognize that document, Mr. Falco?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize it to be?
It was an estimate of just some very basic parts from Frank Kroll, who was one of the electricians. And this is just some basic parts, and it just shows on here that the parts that are necessary, they're not available.
So it shows that the, and I'm just going to read it the way it is, I have no idea what these parts are, but the way the invoice reads from Standard Electric that Mr. Prawl asked for was a CH1MM412RRL 4U 1PH stacked mod, $985.30, 8 to 10 months. A CH1MM512RRL 5U 1PH stacked mod, again, 8 to 10 months, cost of $1075.14. And were you under an order from the Southeast Housing Court to resolve the correction order and restore the tenants who were unlawfully evicted from the premises to their apartment?
Yes.
And can you do that in a timely fashion, given the fact that these components, at minimum, are not available for 8 to 10 months?
No, I can't. These are just one example of many parts that are not available.
And were you also in touch with anyone from National Grid with regard to a workaround, given this problem?
Yes.
Show me the document. Case. Do you recognize that document, sir?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is an email from Dustin Tashiro of National Grid, who is the field supervisor of this area.
And what does Mr. Tashiro tell you in this email?
He tells me that because in the email it says, per our conversation, the power cannot be restored as we have not received approval from the wire inspector, or from the municipal wire inspector. If he calls and requests an emergency connective service, we'll be able to restore power. You have an open work request number 30762-302, which does not show a clear inspection either. Thank you, Dustin, and then some legal signature stuff at the bottom.
And it's your understanding that the wiring inspector will not make such a call?
Not only will he not make such a call, he's told both myself and Mr. Zimmel he refuses to work with me.
Previously, with regard to Mr. Gardner, did he issue a report with regard to the electrical system for you?
Yes.
And Mr. Gardner is a master electrician, is that correct?
I believe him to be, yes.
And is this his report?
Yes.
And why don't you give me the highlights of his report that he issued for you?
Well, when the building was first illegally condemned by this board, or by the Board of Health, well, I don't even know if that was what happened, but anyways, at the illegal condemnation, I hired an electrician to try to figure out what is the problem here. So he inspected the entire building, inspected the service, and he was really kind of dumbfounded as to what we were really talking about. It appeared to him, after talking, looking at some records and talking to the inspector, that the town just doesn't really keep records or permits. And really, the issue was, are there permits? The issue really had nothing to do with the actual work of this building. This building was built in 1880, it was built before electricity was even installed in buildings. And he just walked through to see if there was any obvious signs of something that was wrong and what should he fix so tenants could move back in. And he didn't really find anything.
And you didn't find anything that wasn't safe, is that correct?
No, he didn't.
Mr. Falco, what's your understanding of when this building was constructed?
In 1880.
And with regard to the egress that town council cited you earlier to the third floor, did you put in that egress?
No.
So there's actually two pre-existing means of egress to the third floor. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you call I know many of the town officials call the third floor an attic. Would you consider it to be an attic?
No.
How high are the ceilings on the third floor?
They're the same, they're the same height as in my house. I live in 8 feet. Certainly enough headroom.
And the exterior windows, are they full size?
Yes.
All of the exterior windows?
Yes.
And is there any kind of a scuttle to an attic area that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
And how many units were in the building when you purchased it?
6 dwelling units and 2 efficiency units.
And where were those units located?
Same place that they're located now, throughout the 3 floors of the building.
Well, how many were on the third floor?
2.
How many were on the second floor?
2.
And how many were on the first floor?
4.
And of the 4 that were on the first floor, where were the efficiencies? Or what you're calling efficiencies?
Kind of in the front of the building.
That's all I have. Oh, wait, there was, yeah. Yeah, we're done.
Counsel?
Good evening, Mr. Falco. Mr. Falco, before this property was purchased, you had a purchase and sale agreement, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And do you know how many units the purchase and sale agreement said existed at the building?
I believe it says 6.
Because there were 6 units in the building when you bought it, isn't that correct?
Well, we just memorialized this whole thing 2 days ago, so if you want to go over that again, I suppose we can, but I never said that, no.
Mr. Falco?
Answer the question.
Yeah, just,
I've never said that.
Okay. But the purchase and sale agreement that you signed says there were 6 units in it, isn't that correct?
6 dwelling units, which is what I just stated, yes.
And, sir, the building was also appraised on behalf of Norwood Cooperative Bank, isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And you saw that appraisal before you purchased the property, isn't that correct?
No, it isn't.
Did you have an attorney representing you in connection with the sale of this property?
Yes.
Is his name Brian Lynch?
I have no idea.
Stiles Associates in Marshfield? Does that refresh your memory?
I know that it's Styles, yes.
Okay. And are you aware that an attorney Lynch on your behalf requested a copy and received a copy of an appraisal for this property?
I'm not particularly aware, no, that's where it says it somewhere.
And were you aware that the appraiser, in his appraisal report, indicated that at best he could determine there were 5 units?
No, I'm not aware of that. Oh, I guess repeat the question?
Well, did you note anywhere in the appraisal report, well, have you read the appraisal report?
Not in full, no.
Well, have you read the portion of the appraisal report which talks about there being 5 legal units in this building at the time the appraisal was conducted?
I'm not in full, but I'm aware that it says that.
Sir, you handed the Board of Health a Standard Electric quotation dated April 10th, 2023. Did you purchase the 3 items that are listed here on April 10th of 2023?
No.
It says ordered by Frank. Is that Frank Prawl, the electrician?
It is.
And when did you first engage Frank Prawl to do any work?
Mid-March at some point,
March of 2023?
roughly, yes.
Has Mr. Prawl done any work on the property since that mid-March date you engaged him?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Has Mr. Prawl applied for any wiring permits to do any electrical work since the date you engaged him in March of 2023?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. And now, you indicated you spoke to or had a communication with a person by the name of Dustin DeShiro, who you say is a field supervisor at National Grid?
That's how it was explained to me.
Okay. It doesn't indicate under his name that he's a field supervisor, does it?
I'm only telling you what he told me. I have no idea what his actual position is.
Okay. Have you had any contact with National Grid since the date of that email, March 28, 2023, about restoration of the electrical service?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that they've told you that you are obligated to bring the internal power or the meters to the outside of the building?
I was told that that's what Mr. Paul, the wiring inspector, wanted, and that's what they were gonna request, whatever he requested.
Okay. And were you provided through your attorney a copy of an email written by a John McLaughlin, who is a supervisor at National Grid?
I know that something was provided. I don't know if it's an email that was provided as we sat down here.
Okay. There was an email dated Friday, April 21st at 3:21 p.m., written by John McLaughlin. And it indicates, this customer will need to follow our process and procedure and complete...
Objection. If counsel's going to read from a document, I think it would probably be best if he gives the document to the witness, so the witness gets...
You have my copy. I gave you a copy of it.
What exhibit are we referring to?
Exhibit 11. Mr. Falco, have you seen Exhibit 11?
Yes?
And did you receive that through your attorney, Attorney Creed?
Yes?
And did you contact Mr. McLaughlin after April 21st to determine what his requirements were for restoration of power to this property?
I've already talked to the person that's in charge of the power of the property. I don't know who this person is. I have no idea.
Okay. Did you speak to Attorney Christopher Aronson or Attorney Brendan Toohey, who are National Grid attorneys?
I tried to make contact with them, and there was no contact information, so it certainly was a runaround. I've not heard anything back.
Could you look at Exhibit 13, please?
Yes,
Have you seen that email prior to tonight?
I believe.
Okay. It says, it's an email written by me to Attorney Creed, Friday, April 28, 2023 at 2:21. J, in order to make absolutely certain as to what National Grid's requirements were for Mr. Falco's property, I spoke today with National Grid's attorney Brendan Toohey, 781.
I think I have a different, I don't think I'm on the same thing that you're on.
You're on 12. He's on 13.
Okay.
Okay. Do Do you see that now, the
I see
correct
it now,
exhibit?
yeah. Okay.
Okay. When did you see this email?
Well, it's dated April 28th, so, which is a Friday, so probably Monday.
Okay. Have you attempted to reach Attorney Tui to confirm or deny any of the information that's sent in this email?
Yes, on the original email that we read a few minutes ago, there was no contact information. This contact information I only got on Monday, and today's Wednesday.
The third sentence says, he also explains to me that Mr. Falco has been told by National Grid the same thing, and that's in reference to the prior sentence. National Grid requires the meters to be mounted outside and that it be brought up to code before they will re-energize the system. Isn't that what National Grid has told you?
National Grid has told me that that is what Mr. Paul is requiring. Mr. Paul or yourself have also not told them that the power was illegally cut or that the condemnation was illegal. So they're only going on what Mr. Paul wants, not what's required.
Sir,
That's how it's been explained to me.
you've had Mr. Gardner as a electrician since May of 2021, isn't that correct?
Repeat the question?
You know who Timothy Gardner is?
I do,
Is he an electrician that you've employed in the past in connection with this property?
yes.
And he's worked for you since May of 2021?
Well, he's never actually done any work that I'm aware of, but he's the person that wrote the report.
Okay. In fact, Mr. Gardner has given you proposals to do work on this property, has he not?
I don't know if, we've discussed it, I don't know if it's quite a proposal.
You've never received a proposal from Mr. Timothy Gardner to do electrical work on this property since May of 2021? Is that your testimony?
The most discussion, I've never received a written proposal, I've never received the price. What he's always told me is these pots that we're talking about are not pots that you just walk into a store and buy. They're all special order pots.
Okay. When did he first tell you that?
The very first day that I talked to him,
That'd be May of 2021?
when he wrote this report, yes.
So you've known since May of 2021, when you first dealt with him, that you needed to order parts that had a long lead time. Isn't that correct?
Well, I also always knew that the power was illegally shut off too.
Sir, my question is, you've always known that you had to install parts in order to restore service that had a long lead time. Isn't that true?
No, it isn't.
Well, I thought you just indicated a few moments ago that you have always known that it was going to take a long time to get these parts.
I don't believe that was his testimony.
I know it's been, I've known for a long time that if these pots are necessary, it's a long time to get them. But again, I've always known that this whole entire process has been illegal.
Mr. Falco, you haven't had electricity in this building since May of 2021, isn't that correct?
That's when it was illegally shut off, yes.
Okay. Sir, you've not restored the power since that date, isn't that correct, the date that it was disconnected?
There's been constant interference from this town, so no, it hasn't been turned on.
Sir, you've never paid an electrician to restore the service at this property, isn't that true?
I guess I have not.
And you've never applied for a wiring permit to restore the electrical service to this building since May of 2021, isn't that correct?
I have.
Who did you pay, sir, under oath?
What's the question?
Who did you pay to
That's not the
restore
question
electric?
that was previously
Jack,
asked.
that was not the question that was asked. You're asking a different question now.
Who did you pay for the permit?
What permit? What do we, I don't,
Who did you pay for the electric permit to restore power to the building since May of 2021?
And I'm going to object because the first question.
First question was, have you ever applied for a permit?
Thank you.
Have you ever applied for a permit?
not me personally.
Okay. Has somebody on your behalf applied for a permit to restore the power to this building?
Yes.
Who applied for the permit?
I believe his name, I believe it's Timothy Gardner through his outfit.
And when did he apply for the permit?
Sometime during the illegal condemnation.
And sir, in fact, he actually received a permit to do work, isn't that correct?
He did.
And did you authorize the work to proceed under the permit that was issued?
Well, he applied for the permit previously to get into the building, under my direction, was to just apply for whatever permit the electrical inspector asks you to. So that's what he did.
But you've not performed any work that was authorized under that permit that you say was issued, is that correct?
He didn't, no.
I think I'm all set.
Mr. Falco, you're asked a number of questions about Timothy Gardner's permit. What was the day that the power was cut off to the building per the order of the Board of Health through its health agent?
5/27.
And if I suggest to you that Mr. Gardner applied for the permit on May 26th of 2021, would that refresh your recollection as to when Mr. Gardner applied for the permit?
Yes.
And the permit was actually issued the following day, which was 5/27/21, correct?
I believe so.
And that's the same day that the town got the power.
Yes.
So did you have any conversations with Mr. Gardner on that day?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
I had multiple conversations with Mr. Gardner throughout this whole week.
Well, did Mr. Gardner attempt to contact you about effectuating that permit, given the fact that the power had been shut off?
He did.
And what was the result of those conversations?
He wasn't sure why he wasn't sure why that this was happening.
And is that as reflected in the report that he issued to you in May of 2021 that's been submitted to the board?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
No questions.
Does the board have any questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. You're all set, Mr. Falco.
If we want rebuttal now, I can recall the tenants, or do we want to wait until afterward?
How lengthy is your rebuttal gonna be?
Brief.
Okay, just bring them up now, we'll
Yep.
get your side out of the way, and then.
Did you hear the testimony from the letter from Mr. McLaughlin of National Grid with regard to tenants that National Grid was at the property because of tenant complaints about the building?
Yeah, I heard that.
Did you make any such complaints?
I never made a complaint
Are you
about
aware
that
of-
building at all.
Are you aware of any other tenants who made complaints that led to National Grid coming out to the property on May 19th, 2021?
No.
What was going on May 19th, 2021 at the property?
Is that when they did the inspection? I wasn't there, I was at work.
Okay, thank you. But are you aware after the fact that the town conducted an inspection on that date?
I was told the night before that they would be coming in the next day to do an inspection, so there wasn't even a 24-hour notice that anyone was coming in. Well, I wasn't informed. And they came in and I heard nothing about the inspection afterwards until I came home and the power was turned off, and then we were calling the management company that Mr. Falco dealt with, asking why. They didn't know why.
Okay, you've already given testimony to this effect, so I appreciate it. Yeah, and I would ask if you confine it to what you know or what you observe personally the best you can.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Are you aware that the inspection of May 19th was pursuant to a court order?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
No questions.
Thank you.
Tracy Duray, Arnold Benjamin. Did you folks hear the testimony with regard to, or the representations with regard to the letter from Mr. McLaughlin at National Grid about what happened on May 19th, 2021?
Yes.
And did you make any complaints about the building that led National Grid to come out on May 19th, 2021?
No.
Are you aware of any other tenants who made complaints about the building that led National Grid to come out on May 19th, 2021?
No.
Are you aware of what was going on May 19th, 2021 at the building?
Me personally, no.
Were you subsequently aware that the town conducted an inspection?
I was home while they came to inspect the house.
Okay. What were you told about what was going on May 19th, 2021?
Not much.
Okay. Were you aware that the inspection was taking place as a result of a court order?
Not at all.
Okay. No one told you that?
No.
Okay. But again, you didn't make any complaints, and you're not aware of any of the other occupants making any complaints about the building that led National Grid to come out?
No, sir.
Thank you. No further questions.
I just have one question. Was there a woman by the name of Kristen Morrison living at the property at any time you were living there?
Not that I know of, no.
And are you familiar with the contents of the Superior Court order that authorized the inspection? And who was ordered to give notice to the tenant?
If you're indicating no.
No,
I just
no,
wanna
sorry,
make sure.
no. Sorry.
Thank you, that's okay. That's okay.
No further questions.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Prior to, have you completed putting your case?
I am, yes.
Okay. We're going to take a short biological break.
Good evening, Ms. Flip. Could you just identify yourself by your name and your business address?
Yep, sure. Delshawn Flip, 242 Union Street, Rockland, health agent for the town of Rockland.
Okay. And how long have you been employed as the health agent for the town of Rockland?
Since March of 2019.
Okay. And do you have any experience or training as a health agent for the town of Rockland?
I have taken several housing courses, courses online. I have my certification in pool, food safety, and housing certificates that I've taken on course online.
Okay. Now, Ms. Flip, at some point in 2019, do you recall there being an issue with the property at 30 to 36 Belmont Street?
That is correct.
And what was the issue, and when did you first hear about it?
The tenant at the time had issues with her tub. She had issues with smoking COs.
Do you remember who that person was?
Kristen Morrison.
Okay. And as a result of receiving those complaints, did you visit the property?
I did.
And do you recall how many occasions you visited the property?
Not 100%, multiple times.
Okay. In any of those visits that you made in 2019, did you have the ability to observe the interior condition of the second and third floors of this property?
I did.
And do you recall the condition particularly of the stairs and the stairs leading to the third floor and the condition of the third floor?
Yes, it was all studded.
Did the work appear to be... Objection to this line of questioning. It's well beyond the scope of the decision that's being appealed here tonight.
I'll allow the questions.
Okay, I just want to state for the record, they indicated they didn't do any work on the property, so this is in rebuttal to that. So, okay, Ms. Flip, after you made those observations, at some point, did you have occasion to come back to the property for a further inspection of the property?
Yes.
And when was that?
After September 2019?
Yes.
May 21st, 2021.
And what was the circumstances at that time?
We were ordered by Superior Court to do a full inspection.
Okay. And as a result of that inspection, was there an order issued by you?
That's correct.
And what was that order?
To fix items that were deemed to endanger.
Okay. And was there any direction as it relates to the occupancy of the property?
I'm sorry, excuse me?
Were there any orders directed to the occupancy of the property?
To vacate the property?
were there any orders to vacate the property?
Yes.
Ms. Flip, did you have occasion to re-inspect the property on March 15th, 23?
Yes.
And do you know what the circumstances were there where there was a re-inspection of the property?
Similar conditions from the original 2021.
Were there any differences in the condition of the property between March 15th, 2023 and the May 2021 timeframe?
There was electricity, there was power utilities. In 2019, electricity and gas was on. And then in 2023, there was no power on, but the third floor was completely done.
Ms. Flip, did you direct that the power be disconnected by National Grid?
I did not.
Now, when you inspected the property on March 15, 2023, would you agree with me that was pursuant to a housing court order?
That's correct.
Okay. And can you tell the members of the Board of Health what you did generally with the inspection, to conduct the inspection?
What I did at the
Do you
inspection?
recall arriving at the property that day?
I do recall
Do you
grabbing it.
recall other town officials being present,
I do.
including the wiring and the plumbing inspector?
Exactly,
The
yes.
building commissioner?
Building commissioner.
The fire chief and the deputy fire chief?
That's correct.
And the highway director?
That's correct.
And was there somebody else present from the state?
Yes.
Who was that person?
Scott Casella.
Okay. And who was Mr. Casella?
He was just assisting me. He works for DPH, and he was just assisting me on violations at 30 Belmont Street.
Okay. And did you walk around the property in order to conduct your inspections?
Yes, I
And do you
did.
remember how the order of the inspections went, and where you went on the property, where you began and how you finished?
Yes, we
Can you
started.
just tell the Board of Health where you started and where you finished?
Started on the exterior of the dwelling. We went in the backyard, and then from there we went downstairs into the basement, and then from the basement we went to the first unit was Mrs. Morrison's old unit, and then we went first floor, and then to the second floor, and then to the third floor.
At the conclusion of the inspection, did you hand Attorney Creed some notes of your inspection?
I did.
During the inspection of the property, did you find any conditions that, in your view, violated the state sanitary code and would be deemed conditions that are deemed to endanger or impair health and safety?
I did.
And can you tell what those conditions were?
Most of the conditions that were deemed to endanger were due to the no power, no electricity, and no gas.
And can you tell me more specifically which, if any, conditions you observed that you deemed to be conditions that would endanger or materially impair health and safety of occupants?
Yes. I need to get my paper, sorry.
Ms. Flip, if you look in your book in front of you,
Okay.
your inspection report is there?
Yeah, that's what I was just, which,
Tell you one second.
I actually have it right here.
Exhibit 7 and 8.
That's what I was looking at right now.
So if you look at Exhibit 7 and you look at the first page of
Yeah.
Exhibit 7? First page of Exhibit 7?
Yes. The first page of Exhibit 7 is the condemnation order.
Does that list the persons that were present with you when you did the inspection on March 15th?
Yes.
All right, now could you please tell me what conditions you observed, in your opinion, were conditions deemed to endanger or materially impair health and safety?
There was no available hot water. There was no heating facilities. There was no temperature requirements. And there was no the amperage for the electricity. There were, in certain units, there were not efficient stoves and sinks. And then in the bedrooms and kitchens, there was a bunch of unsecured outlets. The means of egress from the master bedrooms on the 3rd floor. I also saw that there were locks, the main entry door did not have a lock on it. The entire doorknob was missing from one of the units. I didn't put down there that it was the kitchen door in unit 36B, but that was the door that was in question. And the smoke and COs.
Okay, did you detail these? Was there any condition that related to railings to the basement?
Yes.
What was the issue with the railings to the basement?
I just saw that too. I apologize. Well, the basement, I can tell you by just knowledge that the basement handrail was not continuous, and then it did not provide a railing on the other open end of the stairway.
And in addition to are these all the conditions you believed existed that were deemed to endanger?
Yes.
And did you detail those in your written condemnation and correction order dated March 17, 2023?
I did.
And in addition to the conditions that you believed existed relative to that were conditions deemed to endanger, did you also observe other conditions that you felt violated the state sanitary code?
I did.
Okay, and did you note those in a correction order dated March 17th, which is Exhibit 8?
I did. Violations were a lot of the windows did not have weather stripping. There was asbestos, the outside, the exterior had some asbestos shingles missing, broken. The posting of the owner's name was not on the building. A lot of outside, rear alcove side rotting, multiple puddles of water on the floor in the basement. Again, windows, a lot of windows that were didn't have a seal or a sash, or they wouldn't open or shut without excessive force. There was a lot of, there was some paint chipping on ceilings on the 2nd floor. The 3rd floor, there was evidence of rodents.
And is there anything else?
Some missing doorknobs again. No, I think that's basically. In one of the units, one of the efficiency units, the floor was carpet in the kitchen.
Okay. And did you detail by section number what provisions of the sanitary code were in your condemnation and correction order?
I did.
A little while ago tonight, tenants Dory and Benjamin testified.
Mm-hmm.
You were present for their testimony.
I was.
Did you ever receive a complaint from Ms. Dory about the property?
I did.
And do you recall that complaint?
I was at the property with a previous chairman looking at the dumpster that was at the property. And when I was there, Ms. Durr came out and invited myself and Chairman Scott Margolis into her unit.
And what did she say to you?
She had multiple complaints about what was going on. She had also informed me that she had concerns about her electric bill,
And what were the concerns she expressed about her electric bill?
that she was not being charged properly. And worked with her over a year on trying to get a service disconnect order removed from her account.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Counsel?
With regards to the last issue about Ms. Duray, when did that issue come up?
March 24th, 2021. No, May 24th, sorry. May 19th is the day that I was looking at the dumpster that was placed outside, because we had complaints about it from an abutter.
So I'm asking, what was the date of the conversation that you alluded to with Ms. Duray?
I think it was May 19th.
And on May 19th, you were at the property for what purpose?
Looking at a dumpster.
On May 19th of 2021?
Yes, I believe so.
That was the only reason you were at the property, was to look at the dumpster?
It was, yes.
So if I suggest to you that the May 19, 2021 inspection report that you issued states in the first sentence after inspection report, 30 Belmont Street, on Wednesday, May 19, 2021, pursuant to an order of the Plymouth County Superior Court, an inspection of 30 to 36 Belmont Street, Rockland, Mass. Was conducted. The following inspectors for the town of Rockland were present: Tom Rubel, Building Commissioner; James Paul, Electrical Inspector; William Callahan, Plumbing Gas Inspector; Deputy T. Heaney, Fire Department; Delshawn Flip, Board of Health; Deborah Krupsack, Assessor; Dave Taylor, Highway Department; National Grid, Tracy Minnie. Would that refresh your recollection as to why you were at the property on May 19th of 2021?
I'm sorry, I got my dates wrong. I
Okay,
apologize.
so what day, going back to Ms. Duray's complaint about the dumpster, what day was that?
Mr. Ray did not complain about the dumpster. Somebody else did. A
What-
butter.
What day was that?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. It was prior to the 19th
In what year?
of 2021.
So you don't know when it was?
I don't remember what exact date. I know it was May. We had a Board of Health meeting with Mr. Falco regarding his trash collection.
And that was a previously scheduled meeting with Mr. Falco, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And wasn't the issue with the trash that Mr. Falco had a dumpster? And that you were requiring that he have town service as opposed to a dumpster?
That's not correct.
Okay, so what was the issue with the dumpster?
The dumpster is, Mr. Falco did not want to pay his trash bill. He stated that he had private service since he owned the property.
That would be the dumpster, right?
No, that would be 5 trash totes that were dropped off at his house in September of 2016.
Okay, and you were requiring him to have town service?
I wasn't required, he had town service. He decided to get a dumpster.
All right, so I'm confused then. What was the purpose of all the hearings about the trash service?
Mr. Falco was what do you call it? He was saying that he didn't own the trash bill. And he did, because he had trash service at 3036 Belmont Street for the town of Rockland.
So you're saying he had trash service and he had a dumpster?
He did not have a dumpster then. In the beginning, he did
And-
not have a dumpster.
And you're saying all of this commenced in May of 2021?
What's that? The dumpster?
This trash issue?
The trash issue started, I think, in 2020 when he reached out to the water department about the dumpster.
Okay. Some background. What's your educational background?
As far as high school,
Did you go to high school?
I did.
Did you graduate?
I did.
Where'd you graduate?
Marshall High.
Did you go to college?
I went to some. I went to. I did some core courses at Massasoit.
Did you graduate with an associate's degree from Massasoit?
I did not.
What were the courses that you took at Massasoit? Were
General
they-
education.
All right, so they weren't toward a degree.
I didn't know what I wanted to be at that time in my life.
Okay. And so what did you do after you left Massasoit?
I became a single mother.
What did you do for work?
I worked as an insurance adjuster for vehicles, and then I was disabled. I had 3 brain aneurysms. So I took some time off, and then I went back to work for the town of Rockland.
Okay. Any other work experience that you had before you started working for the town of Rockland?
Automobile repair.
So you're a mechanic?
I'm not a mechanic, no, but I was an appraiser.
So is that automobile repair or were you an appraiser?
I was an appraiser for an automobile company.
Okay. And what was your first job at the town of Rockland?
I worked in the town accountant's office.
And what did you do there?
I entered bills.
And how long did you have that job?
I think till 2008 or 9. I don't remember exactly.
And why did you change from that job to some other job?
I went to the assessor's office,
And what did you do for the assessor's office?
administrative work.
Okay, so filing and that type of thing?
I wouldn't downgrade it to just filing.
Well, define administrative work for me then.
I actually took a lot of certifications to be an assessor, and I just didn't take the last course because I just didn't want to be an assessor anymore.
Okay. So you never completed, you're not an assessor? You're
I'm not an
certified
assessor. Nope.
Okay, and what did you do after that? What was your next job?
I went over to the Board of Health.
Okay, and what was your position at the Board of Health?
I was the senior administrative assistant.
Okay, and what did you do as an administrative assistant there? Because I don't want to define it for you.
I did a lot of administrative work. I prepared permits. I took a lot of complaint calls.
And how long did you have that job?
About 3 years.
And what did you do after that?
Became the health agent.
How did that come about?
I applied for it.
So what happened to the health agent that was in place?
She resigned.
What was her name?
Janice McCarthy.
Did she resign voluntarily?
Counsel,
Objection.
you're getting a little far. It doesn't have any-
Goes to credibility of the witness.
Oh,
No, it doesn't. It's a complete invasion of privacy.
No.
It has nothing to do with this meeting.
The former inspector isn't a witness here.
That's fine. I'll move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you a licensed sanitarian?
I am not.
So what qualifications do you have to be the health agent for the town of Rockland?
Well, I had actually years of experience, as they took that into consideration, because I already worked in the department. I had my pool certification, I had my ServSafe certification. I started the wheels in motion to either further my knowledge in that department, like I did in every department I worked at, and then thought there was a position open, so I went for it. And not just Rockland.
Have you ever sued the town of Rockland?
I don't think that's
Objection.
anything to do with this case.
No. Yes or no question?
Objection.
don't see the relevancy here.
I do, it's how she obtained her first contract.
I am not going to listen to this.
I think we're here about a correction work, and I think, you know, it's relevant to establish issues, you know, to talk about qualifications, but getting beyond that. not gonna
Don't make exception. Ms. Flip, you testified on direct examination by Attorney Galvin that you'd been to the second and third floors at 30 to 36 Belmont Street. Is that your testimony here tonight?
Yes.
Okay, so you've been to the third floor when?
I was at the third floor in 2019, and I was at the third floor in 2023.
Really? And you were up on the third floor? You went all the way up the stairs to the third floor?
I didn't go all the way up. I couldn't because there were too much construction installation material in the stairway.
Okay, so you didn't get to the third floor, did you?
I didn't get to the third floor, no.
So the furthest you got was the second floor, correct?
Yes, to the
So your
landing.
earlier testimony that you've been to the third floor was not correct, not accurate.
No, because I was there on the in 2023. I was on the
I'm
third
talking
floor.
about 2019 now.
2019, I did not get to the third floor, no, but I did look up at it.
And what did you observe?
Studded rooms, studded, just everything was complete studs, installation, there was some construction demo, buckets hanging around, and the installation.
And did you do anything about that?
Yep.
What'd you do?
I told the building inspector.
Okay, did you do anything else?
I emailed him pictures.
Okay. And when did you do that?
September 11th, 2019.
And while you were there, by the way, how far away is 30 to 36 Belmont Street from this building?
Walking or driving?
You tell me.
Okay,
Give me
driving, less than a minute.
Okay. How about walking?
Probably 5 minutes, depending on the weather.
And your office is kitty corner, right? It's over in that end of the building?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're at this building and you notice all this construction going on. Did you notice a building permit?
Nope.
And did you call the building department while you were in the building to have them come down and take a look?
I did not.
Instead, you say you took pictures and you gave them to the building department.
That's correct.
Did you do anything after that to follow up?
Not that I'm aware of.
And those pictures are what led to the Superior Court complaint, correct?
Those pictures, I don't know what led to the Superior Court case.
Okay. You didn't have anything to do with it after that, is
What?
that correct?
After what?
After you gave the pictures to the building department.
Yep.
Now, the original condemnation order that issued, the one that closed down the building and evicted the tenants.
Objection. I think we have to get into the issue here, and that's the March 15th, 2023
I'll
inspection.
allow some latitude if it pertains to it, but
The issue here is
Right.
that's what cut off the electricity and led to the tenants being out. So that's the font from which this all springs.
Okay, that is not the issue that we're here for tonight.
but we want to, yeah, I'll allow some leeway to that, but I want you to get,
Simple question.
sure.
I just want to know if you wrote it,
What? Wrote what?
the condemnation order.
Did I write my order?
Did you write the condemnation order dated May 20th, 2021?
Yes.
And you signed it?
Yes.
You sure about that? And then you issued it?
My order to correct the violations?
Nope. Condemnation order. The order condemning the building.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're
If I
talking
may
about.
approach, I have a copy of it.
Yes, I did write this.
And you electronically signed it.
I sure did, yes.
And you issued it.
I did.
Okay.
I have one of those?
No, sorry, you can't.
Thank you.
Can I just ask for the record, is this the newest member?
That's correct.
So, the document that I just put in front of you? Well, which document are you, it's the document that's by your water.
Yeah, oh, this one. I'm
Yep.
sorry, no, I didn't see this.
It's a series of emails. Why don't you take a moment and flip through those? Pardon the pun. Have you had an opportunity to familiarize yourself with that document, ma'am?
Yes.
And do you recognize them?
Yep.
And what do you recognize those documents to be?
Those are, I believe these are emails that I provided to the occupants of the dwelling.
Aren't they emails first to the Board of Health indicating that Attorney Riley provided you with a condemnation order?
Objection.
And then, I'm just going through what the documents that are in front of the witness state, which seems to be
No,
confused.
that's
as to what-
actually a misstatement of what the emails say.
I
Purposefully.
think the,
And I don't think it's relevant.
this document's going to speak for itself, so.
Well, are they a series of emails that you sent to people, Ms. Flip?
That's correct.
And what are the dates of the emails? Starting with the first page.
I'm going to
May-
object to all of these
Okay.
because I don't think any of them have anything to do with the reason we're here tonight.
Again,
They go to the credibility of the witness who just testified that she issued the condemnation order. And these emails directly contradict that testimony.
Objection.
I'm
You're
going to allow...
objecting to my objection?
Counsel.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, just, let's settle down and take a breath, okay, both sides. I'm going to allow the exhibit in, but I would like to get, you know, the link. You're saying you're questioning credibility. I think you can move on. You've pointed out that these are inconsistent with the previous testimony.
Fine. So, Ms. Flip, as I take it, your testimony with regard to the testimony of Ms. Bach and Ms. DeRay and Ms. Benjamin is that they're not telling the truth. Is that your testimony?
I'm sustaining that objection.
Well, you heard what Ms. DeRay and Ms. Benjamin testified to and Ms. Bach, correct?
Correct.
Are you stating that you never told them that you ordered the power shut off?
I never told any of the tenants I was shutting the power off. I informed the tenants that the power was going to be shut off per National Grid.
And National Grid's records that indicate that the power was cut on 5/27 per order of the Board of Health. Is National Grid not telling the truth?
Objection.
Again, you can point out the inconsistency.
And I have. I have no further questions, Mr.
Okay, I'm going to have the building inspector.
Well, does the board have any questions?
No.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure.
When you emailed someone, Donna Marie, in 2021, indicating that the emergency order issued by Attorney Riley, Did you intend that to mean that you had the assistance of Attorney Riley
I,
in
that,
drafting the order?
exactly, yes, I had the assistance of Attorney Riley. I'm a rookie health agent, and I'll be the first one to admit it.
In the end, you approved and drafted the final order that was issued?
Correct.
I have no further questions.
Just one on redirect, because it's been opened. The other emails, other than the one to the Board of Health, state that the condemnation order was issued by Attorney Riley, correct?
Again, sorry for the verbiage.
Okay, so you're saying that's just poor wording on your part?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thomas Rubel, Building Commissioner. Good evening, Mr. Rubel. Could you state your name and your business address for the record?
My name is Thomas Rubel, and I work at 242 Union Street in Rockland, the building department.
How are you, do you have a position with the town of Rockland?
Yes, I'm the building commissioner / zoning enforcement officer.
Okay, and how long have you held that position in Rockland?
16 years.
Okay, and do you hold any licenses or certifications in connection with your profession?
Yes, I'm a certified building official, and I got a CSL license,
And what is that for the members of the Board of Health?
contractor supervisor's license, and a certified building official.
Okay, and prior to your work as a building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer for Rockland, did you have any experience in building or construction?
I have 40, I don't want to show my age, but I have 46 years of building remodeling.
And are you knowledgeable and familiar with the state building code and the town of Rockland zoning bylaws?
Yes.
Mr. Rubel, did you inspect this premises on March 15, 2023?
Yes.
And you were part of the team of town officials that was ordered to re-inspect the property on that date by the Southeastern Mass Housing Court?
Yes.
And did you walk through all aspects of the house?
Yes, I did.
And did you have occasion to observe the exterior of the house?
Yes.
And in the context of this inspection of the property, did you note the existence of any conditions that violated the state building code or the town of Rockland's zoning bylaw?
Are we talking still on the outside?
Either the outside, you can go outside first.
Okay. Outside, I did notice that the curb cut was cut, the parking lot was tarred, looked great. There's 12 parking spaces there. And I did notice that the first step where the tar was there at the bottom of the staircase is on a slight angle, which should be somewhat flat according to the building code. On the outside, that was all that I had seen, other than the door that was taken out and became mail slots. There were 2 doors there, and now there's 1 door there. And why, I don't know, but it turned into be mail slots.
In connection with any of these observations you made, the curb cut, the parking spaces, the removal of the first door, and the condition with the step, to your knowledge, were any permits and approvals granted by your office or any zoning official of the town of Rockland that authorized them?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
As far as the curb cut, that'd be the highway department.
Mr. Rubel, did you have an opportunity to conduct an interior inspection as well?
Yes.
And you didn't know any conditions that, in your view, violated either the state building code or the Rockland zoning bylaws?
Yes, I had, from day one, I still wanted to know how, is it a 5, a 6, or an 8 film? Okay? That being said, I had checked with the assessors reports, and since before March 15th, I had realized that to the best of my knowledge, that is a legal 5-family. And that being a legal 5-family, I'm gonna say that there was 3 units on the first floor, 2 units on the second floor. The first floor, where it had the 3 units, became 2 efficiency apartments, which therefore made it a 4-family. But I'm saying that was a 3 efficiency units, there was no permits pulled, and the second floor has a 2-family, and because of the pictures that I was seeing, and my local inspector that went to inspect that got denied through Chris's wife, said that he could not go into the common areas. We have that on the slip, where the local inspector tried to get in there. This could have been all resolved if he had just let the inspector in there.
Just keep to your observations, please.
Okay. So I'm gonna say that's a 5-family. 3 on the first, 2 on the second. In the attic was rough, had to be gutted. I know the house was built in 1880. The pictures I seen, there was no records of any lath work or horsehair plaster. So that's telling me that attic was never. That if we do find the egress travel, that they're not needed, but those staircases that are there have to be also gutted. You get to the bottom of the staircase, and as soon as you hit that last step, that door's in front of you with no landing. So those staircases are not to code.
And what code are you referring to when you say the stairs are not to code?
The, I believe, let's see, Article, express the floor egress. Let's go to 1024.1 and the 1024.2. And you can check out the 1016.2. Then I had noticed that it's a quick fix, like Phyllis was saying, but that door is an interior door. It's a hollow door, and that can be fixed.
Mr. Rubel, could I direct your attention to Exhibit 7 in the book that's handed right next to you? Okay, and attached after several pages is tab 2, and a letter dated March 15, 2023, with your letterhead on it.
Okay.
Do you see that letter?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a 2-page letter, back and front. See that?
Yeah.
Is that your signature on that page?
Yes.
Okay, and attached to that is a further document that has 2 more pages.
Yes.
And does the second document, where it says updated March 15, 2023, detail the issues that you observed that were building code violations on March 15th, 2023?
Yes.
There's no further questions.
Mr. Rule, let's stick with that letter while you're there.
Okay.
Turning to the page, again, on your letterhead, 30 Belmont Street, requirements, building department, updated March 15th, 2023. See that?
Yep.
Okay, these means of egress that you're citing to, when do you think those means of egress were installed in the building?
Okay. The egresses that I'm talking about here are not the ones that when the house, when it was built in 1880, I cannot touch those. Those were there pre-existing.
Because those are acceptable under the code at the time, correct?
That's right, that's right. I'm talking about the attic and the 2 egresses, the staircases in the attic and the finish of the attic. I'm not talking about the egresses that are in the building that were not touched.
So what egresses are you saying have been modified?
The 2 staircases on the 2 apartments on the 3rd floor in the attic.
Staircases you're referring to at the rear of the building?
Yes,
So the exact opposite end of the building from Belmont Street?
yes.
And you're saying that those were modified somehow?
I'm saying that those were finished when the attic got finished.
Okay.
And if you get to the bottom of those stairs, that bottom step, is right there, right where the door is.
And you're saying they were done that way
Yeah, no
recently,
landing.
not when the building was constructed in 1880?
Yeah, I don't think sheet rock was around in 1880. That's where you get the horsehair and the plaster. There's no signs of horsehair and plaster.
Well, have you looked at the pictures that you attached to your Superior Court complaint?
Those were pictures that was,
Yeah. You notice the lath and plaster that's exposed in those pictures?
nope.
You don't see any lath and plaster,
I
huh?
saw the electrical on the stairway, but I didn't see anything up
Right.
above.
Okay. So would it be typical in your experience that someone would finish a stairway?
That stairway.
You gotta listen to my question, because if you're answering before I finish the question, you don't know if you give me the right answer. I'm just trying to protect your witness.
Wait for the question to be completed before you answer.
Would it be typical in your experience, in your vast experience as a building commissioner, that someone would finish a stairwell to a third floor attic?
If it's on the second floor, for cosmetic, yes.
Okay. And how would you define an attic?
An attic would be, the ceiling on the attic would be the roof, where you see your hip rafters, your valley rafters, your ridge board, that would.
I think the building code has a definition.
Well, depends on the pitch of the roof. If it's a
I think
12
If I
pitch,
suggest to you the definition is 3 feet, would that refresh your recollection?
3 feet for what?
For an attic, to the roof line?
If they came down with the collar ties, 3 feet from the ridge, yeah.
What's the height of the roof line on the third floor, as you have observed it in this building?
The height of the roof line, I don't know, because it's all sheet rock.
Okay, but, so there's 2 apartments up there, right?
Yeah.
That are now, that you're saying were built by Mr. Falco?
Yeah, sheet rock.
And are they low, do you have to duck down to get into them?
No.
So how high are the ceilings in those units?
I'm gonna say, like Chris said, I'm gonna say that they're probably 7, at least 7, which is cold, but I'm gonna say they're around 8.
Okay. And turning your attention again to this document, the second page of your letter, going to item number 6. Can you read that into the record?
All setbacks per town bylaws. Yeah,
What setbacks are you referring to?
parking, buffer zones.
Well, aren't you referring to the setbacks of the building?
No,
Under zoning?
that's all grandfather.
Okay, so you're admitting that the building is grandfathered because it
Yes.
was constructed in 1880?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Rubel, you testified on direct examination that no permits were pulled for the work that was done, that you claim was done on the third floor. How many building permits are in your file?
There's one for a roof. I think that's it.
Okay, so one for a roof.
I think so, on the building.
The building was constructed in 1880. It's like 140 years.
Yep.
And you got one building permit in the whole file. How many certificates of occupancy do you have?
Now, well, which one do you want me to finish answering?
Well, let's stick with the building permits.
Okay.
You testified one.
There's one building permit in the street file. The house was built in 1880. I can tell you right now that probably all the houses that were built in the town of Rockland, probably 95% of them may not have any building permits, and some of them don't have occupancy permits. That's just the way it was. And not only that, but in 1972, I believe the town hall had a fire. So if there were files in there, they probably got burned. That's the best I can answer.
Okay. So is there a certificate? So on what do you base your conclusion? And I believe you said, I'm gonna say that it's a 5-family.
Yeah.
That was your testimony.
Yeah.
What's the basis for that?
That were in the folder as far as how many units were there. I can't give you the dates, but I believe you have those certificates.
Is a certificate of inspection the equivalent of a certificate of occupancy in your determination?
No.
No. So it is not a certificate of occupancy. not that those were the ones that were approved for occupancy. So, you've also testified that you're basing it, part of what you viewed was the assessor's records that show you a diagram at 5. Well, the assessor's records changed from 5 to 6 to 8. So why isn't it a legal 8 now, if that's the basis?
Because I'm looking at the drawing that came from there, and it showed that there were 3 units on the first floor.
I'm sorry, what drawing are you referring to?
You wanna see it?
Yeah.
I believe this came from you at that time.
Okay, so this is a drawing, and it's received by the building department May 3rd of 2023.
I just got that today, but it was given from Bob.
That's fine. All right, so Attorney Galvin gave that to you today?
No, the assessors gave it.
All right, so all right, so it's received by your office May 3rd, 2023. And that's what you're basing your determination that there are 5 units on? A drawing that you received today?
When somebody builds a new house, I give them a certificate of occupancy for a final piece of paper to occupy the building. This house was built in 1880. There was never a certificate of occupancy issued to it.
Well, how do you know that? Were you around in 1880?
No, there's nothing in the
You've been there a while.
Don't do it.
All right, let's,
There was no ill intent there.
I
That was a
understand,
joke.
but we're like,
And Mr. Rubel laughed, I might add.
I'm not,
That's fine.
I just want to move things along.
I mean, I would like to know what is legally there, so that we
Wait for a
could...
question.
Okay.
Wait for a question.
So, there are no certificates of occupancy, so at best, your statement that there's 5 is a guess.
No, because of all the inspections, certificates of inspection, certificate of inspections, and the files that I got, I'm saying 5.
Okay, so is it possible, you said there was a fire in 1972.
Yeah.
Is it possible that records that existed prior to 72 were destroyed that would support more units
What you're
than
gonna
5?
see, what you're gonna see back then, that was a legal 4.
Well, and what do you base that?
I based that on the certificate of inspections.
So you're entirely basing this on the certificates of inspection, which have no weight when it comes to occupancy.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting there. Mr. Rubel, you're familiar with the Superior Court case, right?
Yes.
Because you're a plaintiff in the Superior Court case, correct? I'll show you a document.
Are we going to talk about what happened here in March of
Yeah.
2023?
Yeah, it goes exactly to point, Attorney Galvin.
It's okay. I was gonna let you walk back and then I wouldn't.
There you go, you've seen that before. Have you had a chance to familiarize yourself with that email,
Yeah,
Mr. Rubel?
yeah.
If I suggest to you that that is a copy of the transcript from the Superior Court case where Attorney Riley made representations to the court that the town conceded it was a 6-family.
Objection, move to strike.
I think the document will speak for itself.
Well, do you know where you got that information, Mr. Rubel?
Objection.
So was Mr. Riley on a detour and frolic of his own?
Okay, let's just,
Attorney Crean is way off base, as he tends to get.
let's just not characterize each
Again,
other's.
I will ignore the ad hominem attack.
Well, you just engaged in one, counsel, so knock it off, both of you.
We're talking.
Stop. I am talking right now. Okay? Let's get to the point of this hearing, which is the March 15th. I'm allowing the document in. The document will speak for itself. I can do without characterizations by either party of the...
For the record, the issue has to do with how many units there are.
I understand, and the document speaks for itself, counsel.
Thank you.
Move on.
Mr. Rubel, this matter is about record keeping, and what records you have and what records you don't have. Do you keep all of the applications for building permits?
Yes.
I object. We're not here about record keeping. We're here about a March 15th inspection that was ordered, and an order that was issued on March 22nd, 2021.
And Mr.
How does this relate to that?
And Mr. Rubel has testified that there are no permits in the file, and it's a permit case.
No.
He's claiming the reason that the property was originally condemned was on a representation that
The
Mr.
condemnation's not an issue here.
It
The
most certainly
correction-
is, because
No,
that's how the
counsel,
electricity
counsel,
was shut off.
counsel. We're talking about the correction order of March 15th. That's what you're appealing today.
That's fine. When you cited to the building code 10.24.1 and 10.24.2 and 10.16.2 in your direct testimony, what code are you referring to? What was that?
What number are you at?
I'm not in a document, I'm talking about your direct testimony.
Go ahead, name, give the numbers again.
The code that you referred to in your testimony, you gave numbers that you were referring to that were violations of the code. He is asking you about 1024.1, 1024.2, and 1016.2.
Okay.
Where is that from? What code?
Okay. That was when the egress, I was talking about the staircases on the 3rd floor, not
What code is it from?
Mass 780 CMR, State Building Code.
Yeah, there are 9 versions of it. Can I get which version you're
We're on
referring
the
to?
9th, that's the one that's in effect right now.
So you're citing to the current code,
Yeah.
and it's your position that that's the applicable code?
On the new construction in the attic.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
One follow-up question. Mr. Rubel, in connection with the 3rd floor units, do you have any permits and approvals pursuant to which those units were finished or constructed?
No, I do not.
Okay. And what remedy would you seek in connection with that work that was done without any permits?
In order to, anything to be inspected, that 3rd floor would have to be gutted, according to electrical, plumbing, gas, and fire department.
I have no further questions.
And I would believe that my brother just opened the door on the permitting issue and the record keeping.
Open the door.
No.
He asked what he would do based on the fact that there were no permits pulled. Mr. Rupel has testified that he has no
didn't open
building
a door,
permits.
he redirected based on your questioning. No, he didn't. No. And you've established that there are questions about the keeping of records. He's testified that there's an absence of records. I think that's established.
Thank you.
That's it for this witness.
Okay. Does the board have any questions?
Where can I get one of these white ones?
Which one?
White binder?
He's looking for the binder.
I took his binder and put it up here because I
Can they share it? Oh.
These were handed over at the beginning.
Sorry, I stole it because you were.
Yeah, thank you. You don't need it, do you?
No. Next witness, please.
Yeah, James Paul. Good evening, Mr. Paul. Could you state your name and your business address for the record?
James Paul, 242 Union Street.
Okay, and Mr. Paul, are you employed?
Yes.
And how are you employed?
Self-employed electrical contractor and a wiring inspector, town of Rockland.
Okay, how long have you been a self-employed electrical contractor?
Approximately 45 years.
Okay, and do you hold a license in connection with that profession?
Yes, I do, journeyman's license.
Okay, and how long have you served as the wiring inspector for the town of Rockland?
22 years.
Okay, now, Mr. Paul, on March 15th, 2023, were you present during a inspection of the premises?
Yes.
And did you make observations of the electrical system at the property at that time?
Yes.
And what was the state of the electrical system at that time?
The major issue that I saw was the 4 new meter sockets that were installed with a separate service riser on the outside of the building, a new 4-gang meter socket inside the building, in addition to an existing 5-gang meter socket that was inside the building.
Okay. Had you ever been to that property and conducted an inspection of that property before?
The only time I was there was March 15th. I wasn't allowed to go in. I attempted to inspect the property. I contacted Mr. Falco. He denied me access to the property. We went in with a court order.
How about in 2021? Were you present during an inspection of the property at that time?
Yes, May 19th, 21.
Okay. And what was the condition of the electrical system in 2021 compared to the condition of the electrical system in 2023?
No change.
Sir, on or about March 26, 2021, did someone named Timothy Gardner apply for a permit to perform some electrical work at the premises at 30 to 36 Belmont Street?
Yes, May 26th.
Mr. Paul, what was that permit issued to do?
Relocate meters, 4 meters to the outside of the building with a new service riser.
Okay, and do you know why that work was being permitted at that time?
Well, the installation was done without permits of the new 4 meters. So I advised Mr. Falco to have his electrician contact me to obtain a permit for the 4 new meters. What he neglected to do was get a utility authorization number from National Grid to allow those 4 meters to be installed. They would have sent out an engineer. But he did apply for the permit. I believe it was to get the ball rolling to re-energize the building. He paid for the permit fee, which was $400 at the time, which is based on the number of meters, and an increase in the service size from 200 to 300.
Okay, and to your knowledge, did Mr. Gardner or anybody else for that matter ever perform that work that was authorized under that permit?
No, I've got a note that it was no work done as of 11/8/2021.
Okay,
but
and
there's
you
no
went
work.
back to the property on March 15th of 2023?
Yes.
And was any work performed into this permit?
No.
Okay, and just for the sake of clarity, did you actually issue this permit on or about March 26, 2021?
Yes,
Okay.
May 26th.
May 26th, excuse me. And is the permit number E21-230?
Yes,
And is that your writing?
yes.
Now, when you went back to the property on March 15th of this year, did you conduct a further inspection of the unit?
Yes.
And attached to Exhibit 7, Tab 3, is a 1, 2, 3-page narrative report, and I'll hand you my copy so that you can see it.
I have a copy.
Oh, you have a copy of it?
I wrote it.
Okay. Does that report summarize the results of your inspection that day?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, have any of these items that you identified as being a problem been fixed since that date?
No.
Since the date of your inspection, are you aware that Mr. Falco has attempted to have the building re-energized by having you call National Grid and authorize the re-energization of the building without any work being done?
Yes.
And have you made that call?
I have not made a call.
Why not?
We still do not have a wiring permit for any work. There's been no movement. We've got no application for a permit. We've got no work request number from National Grid that would go on that permit.
And have you communicated the requirements that you would need in order for the town of Rockland to authorize the re-energization of the system?
Yes.
And have those been contained in emails that were sent to Mr. Falco through his attorney?
Yes.
Have you had any communications with National Grid since March 15th, 2023?
Yes, I received a call from a representative from National Grid. He was calling me since he received a call from Mr. Falco about re-energizing the building. He did not know the background of the situation there, but he realizes that he needs a municipal inspection before they can energize.
Okay, on March 31st, if you look at Exhibit 10, I'm just going to approach you. An email was sent to Attorney J. Creed from me, and it indicates what you directed Mr. Falco to do. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
The first thing you told him to do was to hire a licensed and insured electrician. Prowl is fine if that is who Falco is using.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Jim Paul last spoke to him Tuesday and has not heard from him since. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The second thing he was directed to do was to get a work request assigned by National Grid with a work request number. And it says, if you're telling me the work request number is in this email, then proceed to step 3 with the licensed electrician. That's the second directive you gave. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the third question was apply with a complete application for an electrical permit to Rockland for service with Mr. Paul. The application must have a work request number for National Grid and pay the required fees to Rockland. That means the licensed electrician. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then the last thing under that is you wanted the application to detail the number of meters. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was any of that done since that date?
No.
Okay. Do you recall being asked if there were any other alternatives to help Mr. Falco alleviate his situation?
Yes.
And you offer some other alternatives?
I did, because of the supply chain issues with some service equipment. There's other methods to do meter sockets and disconnects. They could be separately sourced meters, separately sourced disconnects. They could be mounted on a board outside. The world didn't stop because of supply chain issues in the electrical field.
And did you have that communicated to Mr. Falco through Attorney Creed?
Yes.
Did you also mention this possibility of performing work with an electrical power generator?
Yes, there's a lot of buildings that are done with generators.
Okay. And At some point, are you aware that there was a communication from Mr. John McLaughlin concerning what needed to be done by National Grid?
Yes.
And what is your understanding of what Mr. McLaughlin has required?
Mr. McLaughlin is requiring, along with others in National Grid, that all the meters be installed outside.
I have no further questions.
So, Mr. Paul, you're aware that there are supply chain issues which preclude certain of the components that you would normally require to put the meters outside from being delivered for at least 8 to 10 months, sometimes up to 1 to 2 years.
No, that's not totally correct. There are some supply chain issues with some modular type meter sockets and disconnects, but not all. There are meter sockets and disconnects which is available for outside installation.
Okay. And does National Grid have design requirements?
Yes.
Let me finish the question. Does National Grid have design requirements for installation on the exterior of a building?
They do. They have a whole book.
Okay. And do they have a requirement that the meters have to be a certain height off the ground?
Yes.
And do they have to be in a single array, or do they have to be in a box situation?
They need to be grouped.
They need to be grouped. And for, let's say, the 5 gang that exists, that you acknowledge existed previously, right? How would that be installed? If you were doing the work, how would that be installed on the exterior of the building?
It wouldn't.
Why wouldn't it be?
It's an interior meter socket.
Well, what I'm talking about is moving, what you're requiring is moving the meter sockets that are on the interior of the building to the exterior. That's your requirement, right?
I didn't say moving existing meter sockets. I said the meters must be installed outside the building, as per National Grid.
I'll be more precise in my language.
Okay.
Okay? We'll forget the meters downstairs. We're just going to take what was the 5 gang, we're going to buy all brand-new meters and put them outside for 5. Okay? Did that clarify the question?
Sure.
Okay. Can you tell me, based on your examinations of this building and inspections, where those meters could be installed on the building at 30 to 36 Belmont Street?
Anywhere that would be acceptable to National Grid?
Do you know if it would be acceptable to National Grid?
I don't know where they would want them. They would need, they're just saying outside. They're not saying where outside.
Well, you haven't had any discussions with National Grid about where those meters could be located on the outside of
That
the
wouldn't be
building.
a discussion that I would have.
I'm sorry, just want to finish the question, okay? And it's either yes or no. You can have conversations or you haven't with regard to where those meters could be located on the exterior of the building.
I have not had a conversation about location.
Okay.
Specific.
But it's your requirement that those meters be located outside.
It is not my requirement by any means. I do not have the authority in the National Electrical Code to require that.
Okay, so your testimony is that the entirety of this is a requirement of National Grid.
That's correct.
And not you.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there any safety issue with having the meters on the outside of the building versus the inside of the building?
No.
Okay, so it's as was testified earlier, it's a billing issue, isn't it, for National Grid?
No, it's a accessibility issue.
Well,
It's not a billing issue by any means.
Isn't it accessibility to do readings? And
No.
don't the new meter gangs have individual disconnects for the meters?
Some do, but they also need to be grouped. But National Grid does not need to be in the presence of a meter to read it. They can drive down the street 3 blocks away and read the meter.
My understanding is that the new meter gangs, individual and in groups, have individual disconnects. Am I correct?
No.
Okay, so tell me what the new components look like.
What you're talking about, a meter main disconnect, is required for 1 and 2 families. They need to have a disconnect outside the building for access by the fire department.
Okay. And to your knowledge, you haven't had any conversations with National Grid as to whether their requirement that the meters be ganged outside would actually work at the building at 30 to 36 Belmont?
What do you mean by work?
Well, is there a place to put them, based on what their requirements are?
I would say yes. As an electrician looking at the building, I would say yes.
You would say yes, what, there is?
There is, yeah.
Okay, so if you were doing the work, you think you could locate them outside?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know where?
I'd build a stanchion, a platform, a structure with a backboard and mount them on that.
Okay, so
That's what I would do.
not on the building, but in the
Outside,
ground?
yeah.
With a stanchion?
It would be a pedestal type of meter socket.
Now, earlier you testified about the four socket,
Yeah.
okay? And what I'm specifically referring to is there's a 5 gang of meters, and around the corner there's a 4 gang.
It's not around the corner, it's about 5 or 6 feet away, same side.
All right, but it's not facing the same way, am I correct in that?
No, you're incorrect.
Okay,
They face
so
the
tell me how they're oriented to each other.
They're oriented on the side of the building, looking at the building on the left side. The 5 gang meter is closer to the front, the 4 gang meter is about 6 feet, same side of the building,
Okay, but you're in the basement, right?
in the basement.
Okay. And the 4 gang meter, you say was installed without permits?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recollect National Grid installing those meters in 2020, in October, after they issued a work request and you issued a permit and approved it?
No?
So you're not familiar with the emails that reflect that from National Grid?
We never have had a permit for a 4 gang meter socket, and in addition to that, you cannot add a 4 gang meter socket to an existing 5 gang meter socket without one main disconnect. That is against national code.
Okay. So if there were such emails, would that change your testimony?
No, I haven't seen any permits, I haven't seen any emails, I have no idea why the meters are there.
If I can request to leave the record open so I can submit those emails? Sure. Thank you.
If I could add, can I add something?
There's no question before you. Mr. Galvin wants to ask you a question, you can add whatever you like. So the meters that were on the 4 gang, where are they now?
In my office downstairs,
And why are they in your office?
because National Grid told me they were not their meters. Mr. Falco told me that they were not his meters.
And you're sure of that?
National Grid told me in 2 separate occasions that those were not their meters. They don't use that brand.
And you're positive the meters that are in your possession are not National Grid meters? I just want to be real clear about this and just make sure that you know what you're talking about. You're testifying that the meters that you have in a box in your office, the 4 of them, are not National Grid meters according to you?
I've been told by 2 different people from National Grid that those are not their meters.
I have no further questions. Thank you.
Was there something, Mr. Paul, that you wanted to add in response to a question by Attorney Green?
Basically about those 4 meters. They were not National Grid meters. And the other thing I wanted to add is that National Grid did not receive any payment for those meters. I'm not sure who was receiving any payment for those meters, but they were directly connected to the street side of the electrical service with a new service riser cable down the side of the house directly into the meter sockets. So there was no revenue to National Grid from those meter sockets at all. They were getting revenue from the original 5 meter sockets. So I don't know who was collecting money for 4 meters for 3 years, but it wasn't National Grid.
Mr. Paul, has anybody since March 15th done anything to obtain any permits from you to re-energize this building or fix the issue with the electricity?
I spoke with Mr. Prawl, and he asked me how to go about getting it re-energized. I said, you've got to talk with National Grid, figure out a plan to put the meters outside, but more importantly, figure out how many meters you're gonna be allowed to put outside, going back to how many legal apartments there are. So in addition to the number of legal apartments, there needs to be one additional meter for a owner's or a public meter. And if any more than 6 meters are installed, then it needs the main disconnect ahead of all of them.
There are no further questions. I think my last witness is going to be Chief Scott Duffy. Good evening, Chief Duffy. Could you just state your name and address for the record? Business address, please.
Yes, good evening. Scott Duffy, Rockland Fire Chief, 360 Union Street, Rockland, Massachusetts.
Chief Duffy, how long have you been the fire chief in the town of Rockland?
Approximately 13 years.
Okay. And did you work in another capacity as a fireman in Rockland before you were chief?
Yes, I've come up through the ranks as a firefighter, lieutenant, captain, and then to chief.
Okay. Chief Duffy, were you present on March 15th, 2023 for a housing court ordered inspection of property at 30 to 36 Belmont Street?
Yes.
And did you enter the premises?
Yes.
And did you make any observations that related to matters that are within the scope of what the fire department would ordinarily be involved in terms of permitting and approvals?
Yes.
And can you tell me what you made observation of?
Yes, sir. Based upon our inspection, we observed the following violations. Violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 148, 26E, subsection B, that the head of the fire department shall allow the installation of approved monitored battery-powered smoke detectors, and provided further that all common hallways and basements of said residential building or structure, a series of internet-connected approved primary power detectors shall be installed, which was the case, but we couldn't test it because of the power.
So, Chief Duffy, Exhibit 7 is a order that issued from the health agent, and attached under tab 5 was a 2-page letter dated March 15, 2003. Is that what you're referring to when you were referring to the violations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've indicated what
If I could have, I'm trying to read off this, so yeah, that'd be excellent, thank you.
So the first violation you observed had to do with working smoke detector and carbon monoxide alarms?
Correct.
Okay, and as you went through the property, were all the units equipped that existed, regardless of whether they were permitted or not, equipped with properly working smoke detector or CO2 alarms?
Partially. There were some missing detectors in key locations.
And is it a requirement of your department when you're doing an inspection that all units within a multifamily building be equipped with such smoke detector and carbon monoxide alarms?
Correct.
Okay, and is there a particular type of smoke detector and CO2 alarm that's required in a building that had 8 units, as Mr. Falco contends?
No.
Okay. Are CO2 and smoke detectors required to be hardwired in a residential dwelling or a multifamily dwelling?
It depends on the date of construction of the property, the last renovations of the property, and the number of units within that property.
Okay. Is that something that the fire department is particularly concerned with in terms of how many units are in the property?
Yes.
Okay. And why is that?
Depending upon the number of units, depends upon which level of smoke detector or fire alarm system a property would need.
So it's fair to say that on March 15th, regardless of whether they were building permits or occupancy permits, we were able to observe 8 units of property?
I did observe 8 units, yes, sir.
Okay. And what are the requirements for smoke detectors and CO2 alarms in an 8-unit building?
In an 8-unit building, the building would require a fire alarm system, a monitored fire alarm system for smoke detection and heat detection.
Okay. And were you able to observe a that type of a system on that thing?
No, sir.
Okay. And are there any other requirements that would be applicable to an 8-unit building?
An 8-unit building would also require an automatic sprinkler system to be installed per the code.
Okay, and were you able to observe any automatic sprinkler system in this building?
No, sir.
At what point does the number of units trigger those requirements?
For an automatic sprinkler system, it would be required in a substantially renovated building of 4 or more units.
Okay.
It would be for an automatic fire alarm system, 6 or more units.
Okay, is that all detailed in your letter?
Yes.
Okay. And were there any other violations that you observed that were of concern to you as the fire chief in Rockland?
The width of the egress stairs, on the 3rd floor, the rear stairs, the furthest away from the Belmont Street, as well as the visibility of those stairs. Those stairs were hidden behind a half wall in a bedroom, not easily seen, as well as emergency lighting detailing those stairs.
Okay. And what relevance do these issues have to someone that might occupy those 3rd floor units? Or anybody that was visiting that?
Anybody visiting, I mean, it's just as a second means of egress in case of fire, proper second means of egress.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Chief Duffy, how would you define substantial renovation?
I believe substantial renovation is defined per the code as 50% or more of the property value.
And is that the rubric you used to make the determination in this particular case that an automatic sprinkler system is required?
The rubric that we would have used would have been that it was 8 units.
So just the 8 units, just the fact that there were 8 units?
Yes, sir.
And when you're referring to the law, are you referring to General Laws, Chapter 148, Section 26I?
Yes, sir.
So your determination was based entirely on the fact that there were 8 units and nothing else?
Yes, sir, but within my letter, the last paragraph is that it states that there is a discrepancy regarding the number of units, and we urged Mr. Falco to determine through the building department and the zoning board of appeals to get a proper ruling on the number of units, depending upon what we would require at that time.
Okay. I'm going to show you some documents. How long is this time? Because I've been stiffing you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Do you have an extra one?
Oh, yeah, here, actually, there you go. The cover letter is the one to the public records request response. Don't seem to have an extra copy of that. Take your time to familiarize yourself with that and just let me know when you're done, Chief.
Yes, I'm familiar with these documents. I'm familiar with, yes, the documents, yes, sir.
So the first letter is a letter written by, I believe it's Lieutenant Heaney?
Deputy Fire Chief Heaney.
Deputy Fire, my bad. Deputy Fire Chief Heaney, and it's in a response to a public records request that came from my office, correct?
I'm going to have to assume that's correct, sir.
Okay.
I don't know what it's in regard to, as it does not state, but I'm going to assume that it is.
If I suggest to you that is what it is, and it has a bait stamp in the bottom right-hand corner in red, well, yours is in black. but it should say RFD or Rock FD 0001.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when those came in, I did that. I bait stamped them.
Okay.
Okay, so that all the documents that you provided have a number.
I'm not doubting you, sir.
Okay. No, I'm just explaining it to you because the next document is also numbered.
Yes,
And do you recognize this document?
I do recognize this document.
Okay, these are notes, are they not, from a meeting that occurred at 10 o'clock on May 27th, 2021, with all the inspecting people from the town of Rockland, with Attorney Riley and Douglas Lapp. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you know whose notes these are?
Yes, sir.
Whose notes are they?
These are my notes, sir.
Okay. So, turning your attention to the second page. The third note up from the bottom.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you read that into the record?
Mr. Riley, is this okay to proceed?
Well, you can read it. You don't seek any guidance from Mr. Riley. If Mr. Riley and Mr. Galvin want to object, they will.
My note says probably has not reached 50% substantial renovation threshold.
And again, these are your notes on May 27th, 2021.
Yes, sir.
And on the first page, the very bottom note, can you read that into the record?
I stated that so long as existing system is properly working, we do not have an issue with partial occupancy, 3 or 4 units.
Thank you. Show you another document. I'm not getting columns.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you recognize that document, Chief?
I do, yes, sir.
So what do you recognize that to be?
This is section of law that states what the fire departments can and cannot charge for smoke detector certificates.
Okay. And what are the fees that are listed? I believe they're in the last sentence of the last paragraph, or maybe the second last paragraph. With respect to, you don't have to read the whole thing, but with respect to the building at 30 to 36, which ones would apply?
Well, it's broken down by time, by date, but I'll read that second to the last item. The fee for either carbon monoxide alarm inspection or a smoke detector inspection conducted separately shall not exceed $50 for a single-family dwelling or a single dwelling unit, $100 for a two-family dwelling unit, $150 for any building or structure with 6 or fewer residential units, and $500 for any buildings or structure with more than 6 units.
And was that the law in effect on January 31st, 2018, to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Show you another document.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that document, Chief?
Yes, that is a smoke detection certificate issued by the Rockland Fire Department.
And what property was this issued for?
30 to 36 Belmont Street.
And what was the date that this certificate was issued?
January 30th, 2018.
And it's issued under the same law that we just went over, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was the fee that was charged on this permit?
$240.
So, turning your attention back to the law and the fees that are required, What would that indicate to you as to how many units were in the building based on what the Rockland Fire Department charged for the smoke certificate?
Can you repeat that question, sir?
So Rockland Fire Department charged $240
Yes.
for the smoke certificate.
Yes.
The law that you just read into the record says that the fee can't exceed $150 for a dwelling of less than 6 units, and can't exceed $500 for a dwelling of more than 6 units.
Yes.
So what would that indicate to you as to how many units were in the building on 1/30/2018 when this smoke certificate was issued?
So this was issued for a 6-unit building, and it was, the fee assessed was in error by the lieutenant inspecting at the time of the inspection. At the time, for 1 and 2 family units, we charged $40 per our fee schedule. The lieutenant at the time charged $40 per 6 units.
So you're saying he made a mistake?
Yes, sir.
And he continually made mistakes, I gather. He didn't just make a mistake for 30 to 36 Belmont Street, if that could be correct?
I would have to assume that, yes, sir.
But at minimum, there were 6 units here.
I would say there were 6 units in total.
And you'll notice on the copy that you have that there's no bait stamp.
Correct.
What are we talking about, Exhibit 13?
We're talking about this. We're talking about the smoke certificate. If I suggested to you that in your department's public records response, this document was not provided,
Correct.
is there a reason why the Rockland Fire Department didn't keep this particular record?
It was not our practice to keep the records after a certain time frame.
So that this record from 2018 was destroyed at some point?
That would be my guess, yes, sir.
I'm going to show you another document.
Thank you.
You're talking out loud in the meeting, so you be quiet and listen.
Yes, sir.
Do you recognize that document, Chief?
Yes, sir, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is a letter from, at the time, the day Fire Prevention Officer Lieutenant David Cowing to Mr. Falco requiring a smoke detector to be installed or replaced at one of the tenants' units, locations within the building.
Was Lieutenant Cowing prone to mistakes?
Everybody's prone, sir.
Okay. Well, I mean, by prone to mistakes, did he make mistakes often?
No.
Okay. So, in this letter dated August 13th of 2019?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, it's the allegation of the town of Rockland that major construction was going on in this building as of 9/11/19. This is less than 30 days prior to that, and Lieutenant Cowing doesn't make any mention of it in this letter. Am I correct? There's no mention of any major construction going on.
No, sir.
So, do you think he just missed that?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you have any explanation as to why this particular letter isn't in your files either?
No, sir, this letter should be in the file.
It wasn't produced.
I don't know why.
After this letter was sent to Mr. Falco, did you have any discussions with Mr. Falco?
I believe Mr. Falco called me to discuss the matter, and I stated, you know, as the landlord, it was his, it was his responsibility to maintain the fire alarm smoke detectors within that property. We had the discussion, he made the complaint that, the residents were taking them down, destroying them, whatever our exact, I'm paraphrasing. But yes, I did have that discussion.
And were you invited to come over to the property?
I don't remember.
That's all I have. Thank you.
A couple of questions, Chief. Do you know whether Lieutenant David Cowing, the fire prevention officer, went to the third floor that day?
I don't recall which floor this was for.
When you went to the property in March of 2023, were you able to discern any type of work that appeared to be completed more recently in the property?
It appeared as a layman that the third floor appeared to have newer type construction as compared to the first and second floors.
And if there were 5 or 6 units and you added another 2 or 3 units, would that have triggered the requirements to upgrade the fire alarm and the sprinkler system in this property?
The fire alarm, yes. And again, the sprinkler system, I would have deferred to the building commissioner to see if we had met the substantial renovation.
But is it your understanding there were no permits pulled in connection with the work that was done, so you were unable to perform that analysis?
Correct. We did not know about the third floor units.
No further questions.
Are you familiar with the Supreme Judicial Court case of McLaurin versus the City of Holyoke?
I've briefly skimmed it and read it, not delved into it deeply, sir.
Okay. So you're familiar with the Supreme Judicial Court is, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that would be the highest court in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Yes, sir.
And if I suggested to you that in that case, the Supreme Judicial Court determined
That the Supreme Judicial Court calling?
that the Supreme Judicial Court determined that with regard to Chapter 148, Section 26I, that substantial renovation has to be the equivalent of new construction in its cost. And the other limiting factor that this SJC placed on the interpretation of 148, 26I was that the cost of the construction in an existing building couldn't exceed what it would cost to put it in a new building, meaning an automatic sprinkler system. Did you get that far in the case?
Objection.
Okay. Counsel, if you want to hold the record open and submit the case,
I will.
That would be the best thing. Thank you.
I have one last quick witness, Paul Haffman.
Oh, your phone, Chief?
Oh, jeez. Thought I left that back. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Haffman. I'll try to be as quick as possible. Could you state your full name and address for the record?
My name is Paul Hoffman. It's spelled Halfmann. My address is 3 Preservation Lane in Holden, Massachusetts.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Haffman?
I am a self-employed public consultant in public health.
Okay. And what is your background in public health?
I have 28 and a half years in public health, 1 year in Worcester Health and Code, 10 years as a Master Code Enforcement Inspector, lead inspector for the Department of Public Health, and the last 17 and a half years as Assistant Director of the Community Sanitation Program at DPH, who has oversight of several chapters of the State Sanitary Code, Housing Code being one of them.
Okay. And do you know the appellant's expert, Mr. Zemmel?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how do you know him?
Felix and I have worked together and trained together, and just throughout the years run into different situations that we've had to talk to each other about.
Okay. And Mr. Haffman, at some point were you retained by the town of Rockland in connection with this case?
Yes.
And what were you retained to do?
I was retained to review the documents that were presented for this case, which was the inspection report, the Board of Health decision not to condemn, and then Mr. Zemmel's review of all the documents.
Okay, and have you completed that review?
I have.
And as a result of that review, have you formed any opinions with respect to the conditions of the property and the appropriateness of the orders that were issued?
Yes, there were some issues that I would agree with Mr. Zemmel that were incorrectly cited. A couple of them were not clear enough so that the owner would know exactly which door, for example, they were dealing with. But overall, especially when it comes to the condition deemed to endanger, the one he listed, I would agree do exist.
Okay, and you were present when Mr. Zemmel gave testimony today about conditions he observed that were conditions deemed to endanger today?
Yes.
And would you concur with that?
I would, yes.
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to review the other inspection reports by the health agent?
I was able to review the latest, the inspection report for the 15th, March 15th. Yeah, I'm not that clear on the dates, but I believe it's the March 15th one.
Okay. And have you reviewed the decision of the Board of Health dated March 22nd?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And Mr. Halfman, do you believe that there is a basis for there to be a continuing correction order in this case?
Yes, I do.
On what is the basis for that opinion?
The basis of the conditions deemed to endanger, no work has been done, and that's enough to keep the case going.
Okay. And do you have any recommendations to the Board of Health as to what future orders should be continued and or modified?
Yeah,
I'm going to allow it.
in my opinion, I believe that the order should stand. However, I think because the housing court has already ruled on this case and they've set deadlines and they've ordered the inspection, I believe that the case should go to housing court for a status update of their order and to plead any case that they have there. For example, I can sympathize when it's hard to get parts. I can sympathize when some people say that it has to be turned on by one, has to be turned on the other, but the bottom line, from a housing code perspective, because I'm not an expert on any of the others, I don't even consider myself an expert on the housing code, I've just done it for a long time, is that the safety of the occupants is what is the major concern. So I believe the units should be vacant until all the work is done, been re-inspected and found to be within compliance with the housing code, and then the housing code also requires compliance with all of the other codes.
With respect to the premises being secured, do you have an opinion as to whether the premises should be continuously secured?
I haven't seen it to know if it's any kind of hazard as far as the condition, but I can say typically that they just require it to be, boards of health will require it to be secured just to prevent unlawful entry.
And does that type of an order prevent a contractor who's got a permit to come in and complete work necessary to remedy the issues?
No, because it applies to people occupying, and that's living there.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Halfman, do you know if anyone's living there now?
I do not.
If I suggested to you that there was a vacate order and the property is vacant and has been vacant since May 20th, 2021, would that in any way alter your opinion of whether these conditions immediately are an imminent danger to the health, safety, and welfare of occupants, if there aren't any?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. And you've never been in the building?
I have not, no.
Okay. So all of this is based entirely on document review?
A review of documents, yes.
And you don't consider yourself necessarily an expert on the housing code?
I would rather not, no.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Mr. Rubel included, it's included in exhibit, is the statement of the plumbing inspector. The plumbing inspector had a personal matter and couldn't be here. It's included under Exhibit 7, under the tab for the plumbing inspector, and I just wanted you to know that it was in there. There was one issue dealing with a improperly vented water heater in the basement that was identified back in March of '21 that has been remedied since that date. All the other issues here are present conditions.
If I may note about that, it's not March of 2021, it's May of 2021. And the specific venting issue they're talking about, originally, the plumbing inspector cited to a furnace that's in the basement that's been disconnected for years. It was never connected in May of 2021. It hasn't been subsequently fixed. It's never been connected to anything. They simply missed that.
He's correct about the dates. It was May of '21, and the plumbing department's updated report is March 15th, '23. That's it for us.
Okay. I'll allow, do we want to do closings now? If we do, we can just do them briefly.
If Bob's amenable, I'd simply rather submit in writing. Since the
Okay.
record's gonna be open.
What I would like to do is
Given the lateness of the hour.
Yeah, what I would like to do is give both parties the opportunity to provide proposed findings of fact and hold the record open until, I would say, 2 weeks.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. I would ask the board not to deliberate or discuss the case pending my recommendation. And I'll have that to you probably in 3 weeks.
You'll have to schedule a further meeting
Right.
to discuss this now with
Discuss
Mr.
it,
Moore.
yeah. Don't discuss anything that you did or you heard here today amongst yourselves pending an open meeting, outside of an open meeting.
And the only other thing is indicate when the transcript becomes available, I'm going to provide it to Mr. Stevens so he can read it. I believe it's also on TV, so you can watch the beginning of it. Okay? Okay.
Are you taking these back?
You can keep them.
Okay? All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Had to make a motion to close.
No, you're going to continue the hearing because we're going to leave the record open.
Yeah, so the correct thing to do would be...
Well, you wanted the job.
The public portion of the hearing is closed.
Close the public portion of it.
The record is left open for the submission of proposed findings of fact within, what did we say, 2 weeks? 2 weeks. And then the board will schedule a further hearing at a date and time certain to deliberate with Attorney Warren present.
That'd be a non-public,
It'll be a public hearing, you deliberated publicly. Yep. So you just do a
Motion to close the public hearing right now.
second.
And you can vote on that. And it's subject to...
Aye.
There you go. Now you can...
Thank you.
This goes back to Kelly.
Thank you again.